Code 54956.9, Subdivision D1, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation, Rick Tucker versus Shelley Cunningham, Donald Scioli, NPAT Inc., Novato Unified School District, City of Novato, Civil Case Number 1401954. That was information only to the board. The third item in closed session was pursuant to Government Code 54956.9, Subdivision D1, Conference with Legal Counsel, Litigation, Rick Tucker versus Nevada Unified School District, Shelley Cunningham, Civil Case Number 1604508. We gave direction to staff. The last item in closed session pursuant to Government Code 54957 and 54957.6, Conference with labor negotiators, Chris Koska, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, Employees Organization, Novato Federation of Teachers, otherwise known as NFT. We gave direction to staff.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're on to our tonight's agenda, number 7, approval of tonight's agenda. And I'd ask, before I call for a motion, I'd like to report that Trustee Aguila is absent this evening. With that, I would ask for someone to make a motion for approval of the agenda.
Actually, I'd like to pull something from the consent.
Okay, well, we'll get
We'll
to
do
that.
that. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
we'll just do
forgot
this,
the order. Okay.
the agenda first.
Got it.
Okay, Trustee Butler's the first. Second, Trustee Nell. All in favor? That passes 6 in favor, 1 absent. And it's at this point, item 8 on the agenda, public comment on the consent agenda. It's at this point, anyone in the public wishing to make comments or address the board, you may come forward. We ask that you fill out a blue card, and they're available in the foyer, and if you could pass it on to Gladys when you come, that would be great. I don't have any blue cards, so I'm going to move on to item 9, approval of tonight's consent agenda.
I'd like to pull item F.
Okay? Item F. Anyone else? Same one? Okay. Any other trustee, any other items you'd like to pull? In that case, I'd ask for a motion.
I'll move as so changed.
With the exception of F. Okay. Trustee Mack, a second. Trustee Millerick, all in favor? That passes 6 in favor, 1 absent. And now we're on to the best part of tonight's meeting, and I think in item 10, student presentation in San Ramon, and Amanda Langford will be here presenting, or at least introducing.
Wherever you need to go, just step in. Yeah.
Doing so well.
So good evening. Thank you for having us so early in the school year, and we're happy to show a little bit about what we're doing at San Ramon. So my name is Amanda Langford. I'm the principal here at San Ramon, and I'm going to have my group introduce themselves, and then they're going to share with you what we are working on at San Ramon right there. So if you guys can just say your names nice and loud and introduce yourselves to the school board.
Jonathan, Julia, Megan, Alex, Grant, Daniel, Grant, Chloe. Canada, Jonathan, Sophie, Eden,
I have two teachers here that helped put this together as well, Mrs. Harding and Ms. Raymond over there in the end. And these are some of our 4th grade students here at San Ramon. So with that, Jonathan, would you like to?
At San Ramon, we are looking how to read. We are learning how to read, write, do math, and science. We are also learning other things that will help us grow up and be successful in middle school and in high school. One of these important things is character traits. Last year, we learned about kindness and courage. We learn how to show acts of kindness and courage by practicing them for a long time in a year, not just each month.
This year, we are practicing caring. To show what caring looks like in our world, we started the school year with our special project.
Earlier this month, the Houston area was hit by Hurricane Harvey. Many schools in the area have been flooded and were damaged. Ms. Harding found a website that matched us with a school in Houston that lost everything. This school is Jacinto City Elementary School, and we were matched with their preschool program for students with disabilities.
We are collecting donations over this week that we will box up together and mail out on September 22nd. Each grade level is collecting different donations.
Okay, so what do you guys want to share with the school board what each grade level is bringing? Go for it, Luke. Yeah, so why don't you tell them?
They are collecting socks and undergarments. First grade is collecting school glue and glue sticks. Second grade is collecting baby wipes and tissues. Third grade is collecting bun tip safety scissors. Fourth grade is collecting jumbo crayons and markers. Fifth grade is collecting stickers, stamps, and anything else a teacher might want. We walked through our TK and kindergarten classes at San Ramon and saw how important these items are for learning. We hope to have a lot of donations items to send to Jacinto Elementary School.
So far, we have already collected 146 pairs of socks and undergarments, 76 bottles of glue and glue sticks, 8 boxes of tissues and wipes, 10 pairs of scissors, 24 boxes of crayons and markers, over 50 other books, rolls of tape, stickers, and items.
We want to show our community how much we care, what we want the students to grow up to be kind and caring, and share every after they leave San Ramon.
So some of the pictures you see are them. They shared this at In Motion on Friday, and so they developed what it was going to look like, what they wanted to say to the community. They developed posters to post throughout the school, and everyone's been really excited about it, so it's a good way to show how we care and take care of others that can't care for themselves right now. Some questions? Good job, you guys.
Trustees, any questions or?
Can I?
Yeah.
If one of us want to donate, can we bring it over to the school and drop it off in the office? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. I think I can do that.
Thank you.
All right.
That's a good point. And boys and girls, I just wanted to say thank you. You're definitely showing you have a culture of caring just by your example of work here. Thank you.
Good job, you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys. All right, we're on to the bulk of the meeting now. We're going to go on to item 11, which are announcements, the board superintendent and our student board members who are not, I guess they'll be starting next, our next board meeting. So for that, we'll start off with Trustee Millerick down there.
Thank you. I have no announcements for this evening.
Okay, Trustee Nell.
No announcements.
All right.
Just one, I attended the Technology Advisory Committee yesterday, and it was an eye-opener. Not only the program is out, it's rolling. We're learning things already about logistics and program development. It's going to be interesting because when this becomes a full-baked program to all of our secondary students, that's a lot of machines. And just managing them and what we're going to do with them. So more to come, but there's a lot of decisions to be made. So it's not something that is just done. We got to keep going. That's it.
Good, thank you. Trustee Scott.
No comments.
Trustee Butler.
I was just able to get in 2 more back-to-school nights in Marina Oaks and Novato High School, and they were Marina Oaks was lightly attended, but Kessa did everything manageable to try to let parents know when it was, but it was just not as well attended as it has been in the past. But they did a great job, and I was able to walk around and meet some of the teachers there that they've changed teachers, so I was able to meet them. Novato High was good. Matt wasn't there, but there was a video of Matt messaging everybody, and it was great. And for me as a parent, it was my last back-to-school night, so no more back-to-school nights for me as a parent.
You know, they could fail, of course. Oh, not mine. You don't know Katie.
Doesn't happen in my house.
All right. I was able to attend some really good functions this week. First of all, I'll start with Jim's presentation. Our superintendent presented to the Novato City Council. He did a great job of showing the council all of our successes and also the collaboration that we have and we want to put forth between the school district and the city council and the city. So I thought you did a great job there. Miguel, our food service director, was recognized as well that same evening, and for being Grand Marshal of the 4th of July parade. That was great. It's nice to have him recognized. I went to San Marin High School's back to school night. Always very impressed with the turnout there, and I spent quite a bit of time in the STEM classes. They were just amazing. You guys, it's amazing what's going on there. And the Citizens Oversight, Measure G Citizens Oversight Committee, I attended that as well. We've got I just want to thank everybody who's on that committee for serving, and I think we're in good hands. Superintendent Hogaboom.
Thank you, President Cooper. So just to fill in a couple other gaps, last night here we met with the school site council members. So we did a training for parents and teachers and classified staff and administrators and had about 70 people just kind of reviewing what the role of that was, which was great. Last Wednesday, they had the Novato Community Hospital Golf Tournament, and that's important because they grossed about $90,000, and that money goes directly to our school district to pay for the 2 athletic trainers at the 2 high schools, as well as the extra nurses that they give. And so really appreciate all the support from Novato Community Hospital and for those teams. We had some teams from Novato High and San Marin, as well as some student teams that played, so that was pretty fun. And then today we had our district leadership team, and I see some teachers out in the audience today. So they're working on assessments. So our driving question this year is how do we measure student success? And appreciate those teachers that are out there. See a few of you guys their project is really to come up with an assessment that they want to look at a particular grade level band. So we'll hear more from them before, but really excited about the work of the district leadership team. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right. On to the agenda. We're at item 12, non-agenda public comment. I have one, if anyone would like to speak to the board, once again, blue card, which is out front, feel free. We'd love to hear from you, but I do have one for Lauren Garner. Lauren, are you still here? All right, front row. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm a parent of a 5th grader at Olive Elementary, and I'm asking you to reevaluate funding to include air conditioning at our school. I know this is a topic you've heard before, but I wanted to reiterate that the heat in our classrooms and our multipurpose rooms are rising every year. And in fact, I'm anxious to see what your own temperatures, your own thermometers say at the school, because I think they will show that as well. Olive is one of the schools with the least amount of natural shading with all of the Novato schools. Our 1950s classrooms are in direct sunlight. Our kids are baking in the classrooms and with barely any ventilation. I watched as they walk out of the classrooms like zombies at the end of a hot day, even in the mid-80s. And they can't concentrate, they feel ill with headaches, and it's probably from dehydration. We need to cool off our classrooms. Last May, during CAS testing, the temperatures soared, and our kids were lying on their desks taking the tests, and they couldn't concentrate. I'd asked the board to evaluate Olive's test scores versus the 3 elementary schools with air conditioning. This has to be a factor of consideration. While I recognize my son is leaving Olive next year, I want him to be prepared for middle school. He comes home confused about a homework assignment. He'll tell me he was tired in the morning, and I question him about that because I know what time he went to bed and he got the right amount of sleep. And he'll say, it was too hot to think, Mom. I couldn't even think. Right now, our kids sit in darkness every afternoon. The blinds are all pulled, and there's one fan blasting to try to make it comfortable for them. These conditions are not conducive to learning or even safe for our children. I invite the board to walk through our campus with us to experience a hot day firsthand. Yesterday, I know our superintendent was at our kindness assembly yesterday afternoon in the multipurpose room, and while it wasn't a super hot day, it was still stuffy and uncomfortable for our students and our teachers. And that reminded me of the all-in-one night that's in the multipurpose room the week before school starts. Our children are so excited to go and find out what teacher they have for the year, but you can barely walk in the multipurpose room without dripping with sweat. You heard from Heather Schmidt the last meeting. As a reminder, Olive will not be up to code with the new legislation requiring classrooms to have heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems that meet minimum indoor air quality regulations. While it's getting to be cooler time of the year, I'm here representing the Olive parents because we don't want you to forget about this important matter. It's our children and our teachers deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate. Thank you for coming. All right, and I have one more blue card that will, if you'll come forward now, I think Mark Schmidt. Welcome.
Real quick, my name is Mark Schmidt. I'm on the San Marin All Sports Boosters Board of Directors. And I just wanted to make a quick announcement to everybody that on November 4th, the Boosters organization is gonna have our first fundraiser to start raising additional funds for the Lights Project. So I just want to make that announcement so that everybody knows about what we're up to. So,
Thanks,
thank
Mark. All right, with that, we're on item 13, which is our first staff report, first of two, and the first one is inter and intra-district transfers for 2017-18. Karen Valentine, welcome.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. So the purpose of this is to provide the board with an update regarding the inter and the intra-district transfers received for the 2017-18 school year. A little background is that the NUSD accepts intra-district transfers for students annually. Requests have to be in by the first Monday of March for the 2017-18 school year. This year it was on March 7th, 2017. And we place all on-time transfers prior to placing late transfers. We had a total of 248 intra-district transfers that were received on time and 148 intra-district transfers that were late. And of those, I'll show you the replacement. All right, this one shows the received on time and the ones approved, and then received late and the approval of those. So that's kind of a breakdown, and that's table 1 in your documents. And then the inter-district transfers are the ones that come from outside of the district. And let's see, I'm trying to scroll on it. Okay, we had a total of 219 inter-district transfers into our district and 152 out of our district. And then on the second table, and this shows you a breakdown by the elementary schools and the middle schools and the high schools. So for the 2017-18 school year, we received a total of 767 transfers.
All right, thank you very much. It's good information. Trustees, questions, comments? Trustee Butler?
On the students that are leaving our district, have we been able to gather the data as to why they're leaving? Is it childcare? Is it education? Is it employment for their parents, meaning employment? We used to be able to get that information.
We do gather that, and so I can compile that and get that to you.
I'd be curious. I'd like to see what the breakdown is, and you can just provide it to Jim and Superintendent Hogaboom, and he can give us our update.
Sure.
Okay, thanks.
Trustee Nell and then Trustee Miller. Trustee Mack.
Am I next? Okay. Actually, that's a survey that we're doing with Leslie. That's so it was relatively limited in its questions last year. We pretty much dramatically expanded what it's asking. So I think we're getting a lot of very useful information, lots of depth. So hopefully that'll help.
Sorry, not Trustee Nell, Trustee Miller.
If that information's provided to us at the table, it needs to be put up on the website so anybody in the community can review the same information. So.
Good point.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Not just sent by email to us.
Quick question, any idea how the 2017-18 inter-district numbers compare to last year?
I just was able to look at that quickly. I haven't compiled it yet because I'm being new to the office. I'm trying to still get everything, but yeah, I can get that information for you.
Yep, all right.
To that point, I take a look.
You have some?
Talk to somebody in the district who's done your job before, been around, and there's some classic migration from Catholic elementary or religious elementary to normal high school, or vice versa, to a religious high school or other. And there's some certain volumes that are normal, that have been the same for the last 20 years, and there's an exception, which indicates change in condition, and those are the ones that we'd like to understand better. And that means we're doing either better or worse than before, and would like to understand the better or worse. Maybe we have a STEM program that somebody else doesn't offer, and we're attracting students that otherwise wouldn't choose to come to Novato, for example.
Thank you, trustees. One more question, Trustee Nell? Or Trustee Mack, I don't know why I keep calling you. You don't even look similar, really.
Do I need a haircut?
Younger.
Trustee Mack.
And, this is a touchy subject, but I'm going to bring it up. I'm looking at the intra-district matrix, all the different numbers, which is great, good information, showing, just so everybody knows what we're looking at, where people are coming from and where they went to. And I'm seeing one particular school that is dwarfing everybody in the elementaries and how many kids it's attracting.
Can we put it up on the screen so the audience can see too?
Yeah. And I know this was an issue in the past, but I'm really surprised it's still an issue. Namely, why is it that Rancho is attracting so many more students than any of our other elementaries from within the district? And I don't know if we have an answer right now, but it'd be interesting to, maybe we can, I don't know, look into it. It's just, it seems to be an issue. Maybe not a problem, but an issue.
I'll bet you Angela Chrysler doesn't think it's an issue.
Right. But
that would be our Rancho principal.
Right.
That'd be our Rancho principal, yeah.
But being a big advocate of neighborhood schools, last thing I want to see again is our neighborhood schools losing students for not the best reasons. That's all.
All right, thank
If we
you.
could discuss that when there's time.
And just for trustees' information, thank you very much. Appreciate your report. Debbie was able to find the numbers I requested for last year, just FYI, if you're interested. 2016-17, 170 total approved and 34 denied. FYI. All right, on to our second staff report. This would be item 13B of our agenda. Report on progress towards 2016-17 district priorities and goals, and Jim Hogaboom.
Thank you, President Cooper. So I apologize to the fact that we did some additions, so you should have a pink update to our district goals from last year, 2016-17. Also wanted to point out that we have a few of the curriculum and instruction people at the Cali Collaborative, and that is, just to refresh your memory, Cali looks at some different areas. They look at reading and literacy, but they also look at math, specifically high school math. And so we have a math team that's up in Elk Grove today and tomorrow looking at how they can work together to improve what we're doing with math. And it's the second year of that collaborative. So Yvonne Chaidez and some of our other people are not here tonight. So if you have questions, I'll do the best I can to answer those. So one of the reasons we have SMART goals is that we can tell whether we achieved our goals or not. Overall, I'd have to say it's a pretty mixed bag this year of goals that we achieved and goals that we did not. So one last thing I'd like to say before I start is that we need to do a better job, and we will, of bringing you guys data. And so the next 2 meetings in October, we're going to be bringing student achievement data. I think I sent to you today the fact that you know that the state reports on CASP have been delayed because there were some inaccuracies they had to look at. So we're actually getting a preview of that right now. But those aren't going to be released publicly for, I think, another 2 or 3 weeks. So that's kind of putting us back in terms of some of those, and that's missing from this report. But over the next few, in October, we will bring those CASP results in more details for you, as well as other assessments that we use, such as MAP data, the National Clearinghouse data, which we use to kind of track some of our former graduates, and benchmark data and MARS testing and that kind of thing. So we will be bringing more information to you, and I think that should be helpful because then in November, December, all the school principals will be presenting their single plans, and obviously those are based on that data of you know, how did we do and where do we need to work, and our teachers look at that data as well. So jumping in, you can see some of these we'll put up here in case people don't have them. So arguably our most important goal was our ADAG requirements, which is the UC-CSU admissions criteria, and we set a goal that we would increase that by 10%. The numbers that we used were actually from the 2014-15 school year. But this is one that's a major disappointment for me because we're actually performing below the state right now. We're performing below every other school district in Marin County. And I know that we've been working really, really hard on this. So the goal was really the overall number of students in 2014-15 that met the ADAG requirement was 46%. That number dropped in 15-16 to 44%. And then this year it dropped down to 41%. So over the last couple of years, we've dropped about 3.6% right there. Thanks, Goddess. And then for each of our subgroups, the achievement gap is really that our African-American students, our Latino students, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged students are performing below that. And you can see that there. They were all around 20%. Those have dropped down. The only one that's gone up is our African-American students, which went up by about 10%. And our white students, you can see, dropped down this last year as well. So this is pretty disappointing for a lot of us. You know, we've been working really closely. I know the high schools have with 10,000 degrees. We're doing a great job of getting kids to fill out the FAFSA form, making sure that students know what the ADAG requirements are. I just spoke to the counselors last week. They are working on transcript reviews, trying to see how they get more students enrolled in those classes. And so it's a pretty complex problem in terms of getting the ADAG numbers up there. And we are looking at our intervention programs and our supports we're giving students, because if you remember, I think last year we're in a group called Marin Promise, and they looked at, is it an access problem or is it a problem where students are not doing well? And we found out it's not an access problem. Students are in the classes they need to be in, but they're not doing well in that. And that kind of ties into our next goal about math. So the last thing I'll say in there, again, if you look on the right, the state averages, usually Novato Unified in most districts usually way outperform the state. And you can see that over the last couple of years in terms of ADAG requirements, we're not even performing at the state level. So we have a lot of work to do. I know it's a big concern for the board and for me and our high schools, and obviously it's a lot of the work that happens before kids get to high school, and it's a pretty complicated, multifaceted problem, so we'll be looking at that. But I guess for me in this report, that was the biggest disappointment in terms of not being able to raise those numbers up there. So the second one that's tied into that is math, and frankly that was also fairly disappointing. So the second one, we don't have the CASP results, and so that's kind of what that says there. There's math and English language arts, and so you can see 14-15 and 15-16, and we don't know what 16-17 is yet. So you can see I'm mostly looking for growth. There was growth for the first couple years of the CASP, and so we're waiting to see what the 16-17 results are, and we don't have that yet. The third goal had to do with English language learners and how they did on the on their test and their RIT scores. And while we did not achieve that goal, we did go up by slightly. Melissa and I were talking about that today. That's actually a hard number to get up there, and she was actually pretty happy with the 1.4% on language and the 2.8% on reading. I also feel that the Kevin Clark Consulting, which started at high school and went to middle school, and now we just had a training today for the next couple of days for elementary teachers, is going to be really helpful. I think we're also doing a better job of making sure that those EL students have their designated EL time every day. And most of the teachers that I talked to that have been through the training have been pretty excited about what they're learning from Kevin Clark. So I feel good that we're on track with our EL students to be able to make the kind of progress we want to make. And really that is in elementary school, because we hope to make sure that we exit them from the EL programs by the time they get to middle school. The fourth goal has to do with our graduate profile skills, and we did achieve that goal. It was really to pilot the graduate profile, and particularly the rubrics on collaboration. And again, I mentioned our district leadership team. A lot of those teachers are taking the lead back at their school to use that. So I feel that that's going really well. We also have a goal of, the next goal is about 3rd and 8th grade students scoring at or above proficient on the MAP Winter Reading and Language Arts in 3rd and 8th grade. We did not do well there, so you can see that in terms of language, we went down in 3rd grade from 56 to 54%. In 8th grade, we dropped from 66 to 59, so there was a decrease there. And then in reading, we dropped slightly in 3rd grade from 50% to 49%, and we did not have the results from last year. So we'll be working with our elementary principals and our teachers to figure out what we do to kind of reverse that trend on the MAP test for language and reading. 6 is actually we've made some progress with math, but one of the big problems is with the number of kids who get C's and below a C in Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And you can see that we're making improvements there. So we kind of had some separate goals for the grade levels and then also for specific classes. And so we're making some progress. So just, you can see 9th grade, last year, 77% of the kids got a C minus or better. That went up to 82. 10th grade, 63 to 68. 11th grade, 58 to 67. That was the biggest growth. And then 12th grade, 71 to 78. So we did achieve the goal, which was a 5% difference in the grade levels, but we did not achieve that at the classes. So you can see below there, I won't go through them all, the number of students with a C minus or better in algebra, geometry, or in algebra 2. But it's pretty glaring. I mean, the fact that 40% of our students are failing geometry is a huge problem. You're not going to make the ADAG requirements if 40% of our kids and 30 are failing geometry, and 30% of our kids are failing algebra and algebra 2. It's not just a high school problem, and obviously with Common Core coming out, we kind of switched 4 or 5 years ago in terms of what we want kids to do in terms of their problem-solving skills and their critical thinking skills. So I think most of us think that the Common Core is doing a great job at that, but it's going to take time, for our students now who are younger, and then students coming up with even college prep math and CPM to get used to working in groups and being taught a different way. So obviously we have a lot of work to do when you look at those numbers of just the number of kids failing. The other strategy that we're looking at is grading practices. For example, some of the practices that are not healthy are not letting kids make up work and not letting them make up tests. And sometimes the math department is a little bit rigid about that. So last year we sent, I think about 12 of our secondary teachers up to a successful grading practices training in Portland. We're going to send the rest of our math teachers for the most part up there, and they came back and were pretty enthused about some of what they learned about effective grading practices, not giving an F a 0, letting kids make up tests, some of those things. So it's not all about grading, obviously, but sometimes those grading practices can be an obstacle to kids learning as well. So the overall bottom line there is we have a lot of work to do in math, and that's why we have that leadership team at Cali and working with our coaches. Kat Naum is a fantastic teacher. Eileen Smith's a fantastic teacher. This is not just a problem in Novato. This is a problem in the state and the nation with math. And I don't mean to make excuses, but with the changes to the Common Core, it's going to take some time for us to change our instruction and also for kids to be learning some of the conceptual math than the kind of drill and kill, memorize formula kind of things that we used to do in the past. So those are our student success goals. So looking at our staff success goals, number 7 has to do with project-based learning projects and asking our teachers to try at least one project. The other goal we have, which is down I think a little bit lower, is we want all of our teachers to be trained in project-based learning by the end of the year, and we're pretty close to having that done. We're blessed to have the Buck Institute for Education here in Novato, so it makes it a little bit easier to partner with them, and obviously we pay them quite a bit of money. But most of our teachers, I think we're at about 85% now. Some schools have had everybody go through it, so everybody's kind of learning how to do project-based learning, and so we're about, again, 80 to 85% of the way there. The next goal has to do with making sure administrators and our professional development staff put together effective professional development. One of our surveys last year said that we weren't doing a very good job of reporting out results, and they weren't individualized enough. So the strand this year, when we have professional development days, it started with our first PD day, is having teachers identify areas of need, and then having those teachers work in learning teams for that whole year. So we try to make it more individualized so that maybe PE teachers are learning something different than music teachers, than math teachers, because there's different needs that we have. So we're trying to be responsive to that, and actually we did get, we try to assess how we do with all those, and we did get a 75% positive rating. So while there's some work to do with professional development, I think we're doing better with being on tack for meeting the teacher's needs. Goal 9 has to do with the HR department and attracting and retaining quality teachers. And so the goal was to increase our retention rate for the district by 5% from 90 to 95%. And increase the number of staff from diverse backgrounds from 11 to 15, and then to ensure that hard-to-fill positions are fully staffed. So we didn't achieve that goal. We did retain more teachers. We went from 90 to 92%. The hiring more diverse teachers is really difficult in a lot of ways, and I know Chris has tried to go to different places to recruit, whether that's San Diego State or different places that have more diverse candidates. It's just really difficult. Then the last one I'd say we were pretty successful with, and thanks to the help of NFT, the Early Tell incentive really helped us, because a great strategy for hiring teachers is the earlier you can go out, the better that is. So that worked out really well. And to start this year, with the exception of a social cognition class at San Moran and a Linwood position and a 0.6 resource position, we were able to start this year for the first time with all the math teachers we needed, and science teachers, and some of our Spanish teachers that we weren't able to do before. So kind of a mixed bag on that one. And then heading into our last goal area is community engagement. The first one is promoting student voice. So we did achieve that. I've said, though, that I think we need to move from student voice light to getting more student empowerment and more student advocacy around issues of substance. So instead of just we don't like the food at the school and we want to go home earlier or get to school later, we want to get students' thoughts on how we can help to personalize instruction and do some of those things. So we're working with the Youth Leadership Institute and doing some trainings of those students and making sure we get a broad group of students from different backgrounds. So you're not only getting the student body president, but you're getting a student who maybe is not enjoying school, and you get EL students and special ed students. And so we're doing that at the district as well, to pull a group together monthly to hear what students have to say. So then it also has some extracurricular activities, because we know that the more students are engaged in those kind of activities, then the more connected to school they're going to be. 11 had to do with our community liaisons, establishing connections and outreach, and increasing by 10% the number of parents that we were able to connect with, and we did achieve that goal as well. We do have great partnerships with PK, with 10,000 Degrees. Our ELAC and DLAC committees are very strong, so we feel good about that. And then our last goal has to do with approving the bond measure and making sure that we came up with the bond project priority list, had timelines, and we did meet those goals. Thank goodness, as you know, Measure G passed. We got our bond implementation committee together, ranked all the projects, used a criteria. We've identified the first $100 million worth of projects that the board approved Tier 1. To the speaker's comment earlier, just so everybody knows, we did agree to review the air conditioning. So Mr. Woolard, I believe, is in the process of looking at how much would it cost to put air conditioning in all of our schools, and the ones where it is in the facilities master plan, we'll be reviewing that to see how much it's going to cost. So we'll bring that back to the board. We also do have information about with our thermostats about how hot it is in the classroom, so we can see what that is. So you guys have approved it for San Jose right now. So we'll bring that back to you about how much is that going to cost if we did air conditioning at all the schools, and what are the operational costs of running the air conditioning and all that stuff. So I think we're slated to bring that back at a board study session in November. So that's where we are. So as I said, overall, kind of a mixed bag. I guess it's kind of a mixed bag also with SMART goals, because you know whether you achieved them or whether you didn't. And again, I'm always looking for growth, and I think we're doing a good job. I mean, we're asking a lot of our teachers with so many things having changed. So I think the bright spots for me would really be community engagement. I think we're doing a better job of professional development for teachers. We're getting more technology in the hands of our students. We're working hard on the graduate profile. But those two areas that are kind of connected of math and our ADAG requirements, we have some work to do. And you should see in the single plans that are coming through, some more specific strategies that our teachers and principals are coming up with about how to meet those goals. So everybody knows that that's a big sense of urgency, I think, for all of us. Our equity imperative specifically calls out the need to get more students that are meeting the ADAG requirements. And with that, I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Superintendent Hogaboom. That was good information. Trustee Milberg, you want to start things off?
I'm looking at the math item, which is on page 2 at the bottom. And interestingly enough, we meet the grade level goals, right? Yes for grade level goals, no for specific classes. So this seems a little funny, but I think my theory about what's happening here, maybe you can confirm, or somebody in the audience who knows this topic intimately can confirm. You can take Algebra 1 as a freshman or a sophomore or a junior or a senior. In fact, there's kids that take it all 4 times and keep getting not a passing grade, so they get the opportunity to do it again. So what it looks like to me is this reflects that those students who have to do multiple occurrences are passing it at a younger age with fewer retries, and that really the grade level achievement is more reflective of some progress that we're making. It just doesn't show in the way these numbers are put together. But that's just the theory. I'm sort of looking for somebody who understands this data better than I, or can dig into it at some point and figure out how we're doing in the math program, because it clearly all of us in this room know that math is an area where Novato students need better service. Everybody in this room knows that. So I'd be interested in some further research.
Yeah, and we're going to break that out. Obviously, we'll break it out between Novato High and San Marin, and really our teachers are the experts on that. So breaking it down by grade level, and then same with you. It's like, why is it that it looks like we seem to be doing a better job overall? And then you looked at those courses. So we have some work to do in terms of looking into that.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Trustee Mack.
I must be invisible to, no, just kidding. Sorry. Anyway, A to G requirements might be helpful, at least for me, because that's a very broad set of courses. Obviously, right? All A through G requirements. What might be helpful at some point is to, and I'm sure you've already done it, but might help us, is to drill it down by each of the requirements to see, and I know math is going to be the big one, right? But also to see where else, if anywhere else, we're falling short. Foreign language, science, whatever, just so we can really break it down a little bit more and maybe more micro-focus our approach.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. We work with Marin Promise, as I mentioned before, and when they did that study a couple years ago, is whether there was an access issue or a support passing that. I mean, math was the main concern, but they also did look at language arts and science, and I think foreign language as well. So we have that data, and we just need to delve into it more. So we'll bring that back.
All right, Trustee Scott.
Jim, can you tell me whether or not in middle school, whether or not the parents, when are the students and the parents first being introduced to the ADAG requirements? Do you know?
Yeah, I would hope that's in middle school, but I can't speak to that. I mean, we're trying to bring that down because obviously that's where they need to learn it. I know that 10,000 Degrees, I believe, is working in both of our middle schools and also at Hamilton with our 8th graders, but I'll have to bring that back from them in terms of
Is it
more
something
info.
our counselors can also not only help the students with, but at some point we have to reach not only the student but the parents as well? To just circle back around with that. I was just curious, at what point are we introducing that information? Because it really starts in middle school in terms of, especially for the language, in order for you to get those 4 years, 3 years of language in order to meet that requirement and possibly have an elective in high school.
Yep.
It starts at middle school. I mean, you had to have started a language at some point. Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And unless Greg has more information that he knows about, well, I'll find out more.
Only through experience. So
I know my experience.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
But more recent, that's why.
Yeah.
So having a sophomore, having gone through this last year, well, the year before last, really, I would say that the counselors did a very good job of explaining A to G and how it works, at least with our personal experience. Now, is that extended across every single student? And maybe we need to better understand that. But my personal experience, they did a pretty good job of explaining it. I might have wanted to do things a little bit more detail, especially when you got MSA, as we know, and all the 2 classes you got to take for that and how that impacts A to G. But generally speaking, yes, they bring it up in 8th grade early and often. And I'm pretty sure that the principals do it as well as part of their just general college prep. But that's just me.
Yeah, I'll find
my
out.
experience.
I'll find out more.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Trustee Miller.
Tangent, unless somebody else has another comment first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I think you've got it.
Oh, yeah, I want to.
You've started.
Okay,
Why don't
might as
you?
well. We've been working hard, and this community has invested a significant amount of money in the bond measure that the community college passed. It's on everybody's tax roll in this town, and they're paying for a program for those students who do not master A through G and cannot enter a community college or the UC system, Cal State system or the UC system. There's a whole community college system, one of those campuses is right here in Novato. And we've been working, you and the president of the university of College of Marin have been working to build a program to accommodate paths. It seems like, looking at this, we have, at least for the next few years, a significant number of not trade school kids that are interested, but students who did not receive their basic A through G requirements. And I would like to either reach out or continue to reach out with the community college to make sure that this student load that isn't getting what they need by 12th grade in our system has alternatives in front of them that they know they can reach to. And it could be Santa Rosa JC or the College of Marin, but I know the College of Marin is funded by taxpayers in this town, and I think we have a significant lever on them saying, we're paying the freight, get your counselors over here and help us. And that may require a significant upgrade in our counselor skills as well for them to understand how those programs will work for the kids that are clearly missing the A through G boat. Was it 40% that are missing or 60%? 60% are missing. So 60% need to go to some institution like College of Marin to pick up the pieces so they can get themselves into a four-year school. So I would ask that you reach out to the college and get our money's worth, because obviously we need it. The students of Novato need it. We don't need it. The students of Novato need it, because we're missing the boat here.
Trustee Butler?
Yeah,
Sorry,
just
Trustee
thinking
Noel.
through some of this. Let me first say I have a couple comments. First say that I appreciate you bringing this forward. Since you've been here, you've been very transparent in saying we've either met it or we didn't, and you're very clear, and it's available to anybody. That always hasn't been the case in the past, so I appreciate that we've sort of gotten it in a different way. So just calling it out, and this is what we need to work on. Unfortunately, math has been an issue since I've been on the board, and I'm sure longer than that, and we just continually work on it. It's just so disappointing to see that we just can't get beyond the next, to try to serve our students. And when we talk about students, I want to make sure, I love 10,000 Degrees. They're fabulous, and they serve some of our students, but we have to remember every single student. That every single student needs to be educated on A to G. Every single student needs to be educated on the graduation requirements, needs to know what the UC system, needs to know every single student. So even though my daughter is at home and I'm educating her, she also needs to hear that information while she's at school. We can't just rely on, she's got her parents to do that for her. And I want to make sure that we really pay attention to every student so that we're not just relying on a particular organization to communicate that information, that our counselors are communicating it with every interaction they have with their students and not just a particular group. So I just want to highlight that. And so I think that was it. Otherwise, really again, I'm happy with you calling it out there, and we've got to move forward, and our site plans will have those specific strategies, which I'm looking forward to seeing, which will help me understand how they're going to move the needle.
So just one response on that should help with that too is, so all freshmen are taking the college and career readiness, used to be known as Get Focused, Stay Focused. So part of their 10-year plan is to do that as well. So that's probably the one official place where at least all freshmen will hear about, what is the ADAG requirements, and hopefully we're doing that in some other places too, including, as Shelley mentioned, middle school, but that's one place that they're going to be hitting that hard.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Noel, I think you had a comment?
Thank you, Superintendent Hogaboom. I too want to follow on Trustee Butler. I appreciate you bringing this report forward and not sugarcoating it at all. And I think it's good to face up to these things. I was sort of thinking about the 5 stages of grief or getting over alcoholism. I think it's denial is the first one, and I think we're past that. So maybe we're in bargaining still, or trying to figure out what we need to do here. So I appreciate you just coming forward with the truth. There's some little light here with the African American community jump. I recognize that's a small statistical number, so that number can vary greatly depending on the actual students, but it's nonetheless that shows some success. What I wanted to ask, to follow a little bit along with Trustee Millerick's line of it's the other 60%, and I'd like to know more about them, because we sit here and we go, we're down 3.6%. We only got 41% compared to 45. But is there 20% of our student body are right on the cusp? In fact, we probably know there's a lot of them that are community college bound. So in fact, there might be a high percentage of students who can't get A through G in K through 12. So what they really need is K through 14. And I know that this district's been working with College of Marin to align and partner and to solve that problem. But I think that's a solution. But if it's not too much trouble, I think I'd be besides just calling out math and English, if we could get a little bit more focused look at the in 5% increments, then maybe we could identify some of the issues that need to be targeted in specific ways. And I'd hope that information is available. One of the things that we talk a lot about math, and it's a difficult subject. It's hard. It was, without a doubt, something that I would never excelled at. But I really want to know, I think I've asked this question before, but do we know when we lose them? I mean, what grade, what half of a grade, what subject is it? Is there any pattern that could help us identify where we need to turn the resource pump up when it comes to mathematics? Is it decimals? If there's some statistical analysis that we could do that quite frankly identified the school, the grade, and the classroom as to where we might be losing a higher percentage as compared to the rest, I think that would be information we could all benefit from, and then take steps to improve and add resources and targets specifically. So we have a lot of work to do. I appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to being part of the solution. So thank you.
So just one response to that. I appreciate that, and we will delve into that more deeply. And one of those areas that we're hitting pretty hard district-wide is that growth mindset idea. And for some reason, that seems to come into play in math more than it does in other areas where kids just say, well, I'm just not good at math. Where they don't generally tend to say that they don't say, well, I'm not good at social studies, or maybe they do. But math is that one area where kids either seem to get it or they don't, and most of them seem to say, I'm not good at math. So I do think that growth mindset of saying, like, hey, yeah, you can be good at anything is going to help to some degree. But I like that idea, and we will delve into the details more to see if there is a particular grade level and what point are kids really turning off. So thanks for the suggestions.
All right. Thank you very much, Superintendent Hogeboom. I know we have much work, and I too appreciate your transparency here. Have you ever given some thought, or have we done this, just a kind of random thought? Could we get all the department heads from the math departments and all of our sites or high school levels to kind of brainstorm and kind of bring maybe some new fresh ideas?
Yeah, and we do that. The Cali team has representatives from all of our 4, schools, but then we bring them together also at other times. So, and we have our math leadership team, which meets about once a month. So they're getting together pretty often.
I think that's important possibility. And actually, we're on to that's our last staff report. We're on to our first discussion action item 14A, which your report segues right into this perfectly. Yes. District goals, strategies, and metrics for this year.
Thank you very much. So this is the third time I think I brought back the goals, strategies, and metrics. I do have a little dilemma to ask your help with. So as Ms. Butler mentioned, I'm a big fan of SMART goals because you figure out whether you achieve those goals or not. But one of the criticisms we've received is we've always had our 4 areas of equity, student success, staff success, and community engagement. And then if we have 3 goals under each of those areas, it comes up with 12 goals. So it's kind of like if the district has these 12 goals and then, hey, we're supposed to be coming up with the site plans with all the goals that we have in there and we're disaggregating the data, it seemed a little overwhelming. So one of the things you'll see on these district goal strategies and metrics is the goals are more general overall. Then there's strategies on how we're going to get there. And then there's some metrics, which is how we're going to measure it. But what's missing now is we don't have specific targeted goals for those areas, right? We have general goals. I mean, just the first, looking at goals 1 and 2, we have one goal there overall, which is all students will demonstrate mastery at grade level content, as well as the graduate profile skills. That's kind of the first part. And the second one is they'll meet the UC entrance requirement upon graduation, but we don't have specific numbers in there. So I'm just at a little bit of I could use your suggestions on that. I mean, I guess the one thing to do would be to have some district metrics, but not too many, because when we have too many at the district and then the schools have to come up with meet the district ones, plus also theirs, it just ends up being overwhelming. So the one thing along those lines that we're suggesting is to use what Marin Promise uses, what the National Equity Project uses, which are those 6 milestones, which are kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, 8th or 9th grade math readiness, getting into college, and then success once they leave college. And so maybe we want to come up with some specific goals at the district level. I just want to be careful that we don't have so many goals here that it just overwhelms everybody with them as well. So do you have thoughts on that? I wouldn't mind taking that into consideration, because again, I'm not going to go through these again because we've gone through them a few times. But we don't have specific goals built in here. So if you want to direct me to come up with a few specific goals around those key metrics, especially around student success, then let me know, because we can do that. I'm just telling you why we didn't do that before. And so, again, just super briefly, the equity strategies are really working with the National Equity Project at the secondary level, Nancy Dome, and through the P3 grant and Epic Education, we'll be working with our elementary schools. The District Advisory Committee with the LCAP also looks at equity issues. Those are kind of our key strategies. In terms of student success, as I mentioned before, we need to do a better job of answering the question, how do we measure student success? Because we don't do a good job with that. So we need to look at maybe looking at our grading practices, our report card revisions, how are students going to meet the graduate profile skills, student voice, all that. And then staff success is really doing a better job with professional development and training, and around areas of project-based learning and technology and EL strategies. And then finally, community engagement. And quite a few committees this year. We're going to continue with District Advisory Committee. As Yancey's mentioned, we need a District Budget Review Committee. So we're going to look at teacher housing. We'll be looking at implementing the bond measure. So a lot of committees there to get community engagement and get some surveys there. So again, you guys have seen these before, and I would appreciate some direction about that goal question I had at the beginning.
Thank you, Jim. Trustees, comments? Start off with Trustee Miller.
I think I'm harking back a little bit to the last item, but one of the things that I think is valuable for everybody, and in this you've identified, the easier you can assess your own progress, the better off you are. So my step back is, do we need to make sure that every student knows where they stand on their A to G requirements, and their academic progress in general, and the student can assess their own progress. And all these other items have to do with other people making assessments, but we need to make sure the student can do the assessment. This is a student voice issue in some way, because if they have the data, they have a foundation to speak from.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Trustee Scott.
It'd be kind of cool if they had an app for that.
True.
Track your enroll.
You gotta get some college kids to build one.
That would be kind of cool if you could do something like that. Put all your information in and see it, have it give you ideas and choices. It'd be kind of fun. I'm just curious around that same thing again. I'm backtracking to from the prior one. The concurrent enrollment, Jim, is there anything that we might be able to do? I know that it says that we're going to be expanding. I'm just not sure what that looks like. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for the concurrent enrollment with College of Marin?
Yeah, we're actually setting up a couple meetings. One of them is to see how the current partnerships are going of the Compass program, which is going to be at San Marin and Novato High this year, as well as Get Focused, Stay Focused, or College and Career Readiness. And then the second one that we'll be doing in later October is what other classes do we need to have both on the campus, on our high school campuses, and what other classes do we need to have at the College of Marin, and when's the best time to offer those classes. So I should know this, but I don't. But in addition to Mandarin, I think there's like a social justice class or an equity kind of class that's being offered on the Novato High School campus. And then there's a couple classes at San Marin as well. So we kind of want to review what those are, because they need to get those going now to put them in place for next year. But one of the goals that I would like us to consider is whether we would like to recommend that students end up being able to graduate from high school with 12 units of community college credit. So they're already getting 3 units as a freshman anyway, and that makes them enrolled as a community College of Marin student, which is great. College of Marin is pretty excited about the number of kids that are taking some summer classes and things like that. So, if you guys give direction and we need to talk about that some more, but how are we going to, if we set the goal, that's fine, but how are we going to do that? So those are some of the conversations we're having later next month with College of Marin.
The College of Marin entrepreneurial program grant got extended at the college. They got their grant for the next session.
I read that. Okay. I'll speak for myself. I would like to see us expand this. I think that would be beneficial to our students. So anything I can do to help in that manner, I'm willing to help. I'm sure you probably need to have a couple conversations with Dr. Kuhn and staff, but in terms of moving forward, I'd like to see us expand on that program.
All right, Trustee Nell.
Well, I want to address your question about what metrics should we use. And when I was reading the board report and the attachment, I liked the suggestions that you have here. They're not exactly the same thing. So, but the part that you just mentioned, you mentioned the school site plans, and I don't want to open a can of worms, but there's an area that I think bureaucratically we could lighten the load significantly. So, not knowing, I know that's another conversation, but is there, you mentioned Marin Promise, and they seem to be happy with the metrics that they get, and I don't know if it's statewide or if it's just countywide that they get. You must know, I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm on their executive partnership committee or whatever, and I some of their metrics are okay. I mean, but they're not that great in terms of like kindergarten readiness is just a number of kids enrolled in preschool and whether that increases or not. I think we have more metrics that we could use with that, so I think that's important. So I think using some of their metrics is good, but again, back to that question of how do we measure student success, and what other metrics do we have that they might not have? So we'll start with them. But
well, do you feel like you're gonna come back, or you're gonna have clear direction for our sites? Because the question, quoting you, it has many ramifications for the districts and the school sites. So I'm clear about wanting to have specific things in place for them to want to measure. I don't want to be arbitrary and so what I'm trying to figure out here are the differences between the attachment to the board report where you say kindergarten readiness, but then you just mentioned that it's really not an effective tool because it just says they're enrolled. That doesn't mean they're ready. Third grade literacy, I believe, is something that's pretty consistent and California Public Education's been doing for decades. So I support that concept. Mastery of algebra by the 8th grade is what you're suggesting.
it's actually 8th grade readiness for Algebra 1.
Okay, 8th grade, but okay. So then when do they have mastery of algebra? So it's mastery. It reads mastery of algebra readiness. That sounds like wordsmith in there. So can we just have algebra readiness?
Yeah, well, if you look into the metrics, and then it says 8th grade readiness for Algebra 1. So that's
Okay.
kind of what we're looking at, is focusing on that.
So that's what I'm looking at, the metrics. Because of the differences in the two, Jim, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't leaving anything out, because I do like the metrics that are listed here, and I would say go with these, because I know that we can compare them to other things. Now I'm a little more concerned about kindergarten readiness. And then the final, the differences are college enrollment. Is enrollment readiness?
No. So let me go back a few of those, because those 6 are the most important ones that I think we probably need to highlight. So, for example, Marin Promise uses kindergarten or preschool enrollment, but we do actually in kindergarten have this ESGI assessment, which I'm personally not familiar with, which our teachers give, so we can actually tell by that whether they're ready or not. So that's one we would use, and so presumably the schools would set that. Okay, 3rd grade literacy, we could measure that by MAP, as I said here. 8th grade readiness. We also use MAP in 8th grade. So, but again, our teachers and our schools can help figure out what those need to be. So I think we need to come up, maybe talking with you guys, is come up with a specific goal and which assessment for each of those. So let me differentiate 4, 5, and 6. Okay. College and career readiness is really we're measuring that by the A to G rate. So how many kids are ready for college, meaning that they've taken the CSU UC entrance requirement. So that's the main measurement for that. Enrolling in college, or post-secondary options, we can get that information from the National Clearinghouse, and we have it. So I could tell you right now, if I look at that data, exactly how many of our kids went on to a 2-year or a 4-year school. So we know that information, and when they break it all down by subgroups and gender and ethnicity and all that, and then completing college is obviously that. How many kids complete college in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years? And again, the National Clearinghouse data can give us that too. So why don't I bring back to you guys next time those specific metrics, those 6 metrics with a suggested goal, and after we talk to our schools. And I will say with our single plans, the principals were concerned that it was bureaucratic and a bunch of stuff they had to put on paper, and we've really worked hard to simplify that and tie those all together. And 2 of our schools, or at least Novato High, is doing a WASC report this year, and then you got these district goals and you got the single plan. So we're trying to make sure that those are all aligned so that we're not having to make people do a bunch of extra work.
Okay, so just for my purposes, you've cleared up some my misunderstandings between your background report and the actual draft here. I support the draft, and I think it would be good for you to actually show us some examples of where each one of these different points are, and break out the information and have some sort of comparative. And I don't know who to compare ourselves to, but we'll start with the state, because we know we'll do better than them, hopefully. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Butler, did you have comments?
Oh, when you said the site plans, and it's kind of, I guess, tedious, I guess you could say. But how do we, for me, I've never felt that it's been tedious. I know it's a lot of work, but how do we hold our schools and principals accountable without that site plan? And that's my concern.
Yeah.
That
Well, I
they
think-
do take it seriously, and that they put in there how their school is gonna, progress, and how they're gonna teach the students.
Yeah, no, I think that is the main vehicle to do that. And so the elementary templates are all the same, the middle school templates are all the same, and the high schools are but they're all different, but those grade levels are all the same. And you're right, that's exactly where if a parent of a Loma Verde student wants to know what the school is doing in 3rd grade math because those scores aren't what they wanted them to be, then they should be able to go to the school plan to see what strategies are in there. So you're right, and I feel really good that we've taken the single plans from kind of a bureaucratic nightmare to kind of a streamlined form. And so you'll see that this time. And I think by bringing those to you, and you guys know what areas we're concerned about, I think that's how we hold our schools accountable.
Trustee Mack?
Yeah, I like your approach of it coming back to us with your initial take on thresholds or bars, whatever, to establish for metrics 1 through 6. So I'm looking forward to that. One thing I think that's missing from this, and you do mention it, but it's really kind of just touched on, is Schoolzilla. I mean, there's that, we don't seem to be really tapping into that. I know why. But I do think we need to really double down on getting that asset to work for us, because it's locked up a lot of really good information that's going to help us solve these problems. Ultimately, we can look to achieve these big numbers across the district, and that's our job from a top-down perspective. But the solution is from the bottom up. Each individual kid, what happens? So. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and we don't have right now a data management system that's working, and we should be able to have one so a teacher can pull up a student and have their MAP scores and their CAPS scores and all that kind of stuff, and we don't. Sean and I were talking about that today. Sean, can you give a brief update on Schoolzilla, because we've been making some progress there?
Hi, all. So, yeah, we've had some challenges with Schoolzilla. Getting the reports that we want, everything from data accuracy to the system being slow to the reports not being the way we've wanted. There have been challenges with Schoolzilla. They kind of changed their business model after we signed our contract. And so they moved away from the custom reporting that was what we really wanted to more of a dashboard model. And we've been struggling to get what we need out of the dashboard as opposed to the custom reports. So we met with Schoolzilla. The president of the company came out and met with us. and we expressed our concerns, and we've now developed a strategy with them and a timeline for delivery. What they've done is they've suspended our contract, at least the time period on our contract. So while they work on resolving these issues, and so first things first, without the data being accurate and us trusting the data, the tool's useless. And that was really the thing. Once we actually delivered the reports to Julia and CNI, they looked at the reports and said, well, this number's wrong, and this number's wrong, and this number's, and so, and when we went back to them, we found the errors and stuff like that, but we shouldn't have been dealing with those errors in the first place. So they have until September 30th to get the data accurate to where we accept it, and we trust that, okay, these numbers, all the metrics we care about, it's right, and so they have till September 30th for to get that right, and then we'll sign off on that. The next milestone is October 31st. By October 31st, they will produce 2 reports that are the reports that we wanted in the beginning. First is the student profile. The second is the ADAG report. And so now that the data is accurate, they will produce those reports to our satisfaction. And then from October 31st through December 31st, we will be using those reports. We're going to get 2 principals, 2 alternate administrators like counselors, and then we also have 2 teachers that we're supposed to identify as using these as well, and have them using the reports. And if they are satisfied at that point, then we will basically turn our contract with Schoolzilla back on.
So I would ask if thank you. Much more information than I had before. And I'm glad to hear that we're on a path. I think for agenda planning purposes, it's obvious that we need to talk about this in January, see where this is. And hopefully it's something that our administrators and ultimately our teachers can readily use. I mean, that's the key here. We want to be able to just have anybody turn it on and go. But I working in this space, I know it's not going to be perfect in January. We're going to still have issues. But I do want us to think about what our go-forward plan will be. As you know, I'm not really excited about jumping ship and starting all over again.
Yeah.
But it might involve money, and that's what I want to see what we have to do here to get it right.
And we have a few strategies ahead of us. The first is trying to make Schoolzilla work, because we do have a pretty significant investment in time in Schoolzilla. If we were to so that's one possible strategy, is getting Schoolzilla to work and rolling that out. Second would be finding another data warehouse system that does what we thought Schoolzilla was going to do for us. Challenge there is, it took us over 6 months to get all of the data conversion done from all of our various systems and get it into the data warehouse. So if we jump to another data warehouse system, we're starting from scratch. So we're going to be doing all that work again. So and then third strategy would be to have a resource in-house that is creating custom reports using a tool like Tableau, Power BI, something like that, and like we're creating our own. So it wouldn't be a data warehouse necessarily, but it would be it'd be a human resource who's actually pulling together all these reports, custom reports for administrators. Those are and then the fourth would just be to continue the way we've been before Schoolzilla, where we're just grabbing data from a myriad of different systems and trying to stick them together with Post-its. And I just don't think, I think that's a failed strategy.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Don't go
Trustee
away.
Scott.
I'm not going anywhere.
Should we sever ties with Schoolzilla? Don't we own that data? You kind of alluded, okay, so we own all of that data.
Mm-hmm. But it's getting the data in the table formats and everything that they need for their
And that's the
there were-
time-consuming process.
That's the time-consuming process. And keeping in mind the data comes from a bunch of different sources, whether it's CASP test results or map testing or ARIES or, so it's taking all these different systems.
Merging
and
them
getting
into
it
the one.
all into the pipeline, into one data warehouse.
Okay.
And that's the challenge, but it's also the value of the tool if you get it. So data warehouse would be a tremendously awesome tool, but it's not easy.
Okay, thank you. I have another question for the superintendent.
Yep.
Do you want to ask it now?
Yeah, I'm just looking
Otherwise,
through my
I'll go have a
notes.
comment.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Okay. So I think one of the most basic things here, based on the observations I've seen this report tonight, thank you very much for it, by the way. There's a lot of issues going on, and I think the goals are important, but one risk you run is sometimes you have so many goals and you're just passing them down to the school sites and saying, here, do all these things, and they're just not refined enough, or maybe there's just too many. So there's a possibility that I'd like to see that looked at. I'm happy to see the school plan. I still want to see all the information from the school plan, but if there's a better format that works and still delivers that, great. But I'm really disappointed, and thank you, Trustee Mack, for bringing up see, you're not invisible, for bringing up Schoolzilla, because really, I still can't believe we're talking about this, because I'm with you. I'm not one to give up easily on something like that. We've invested time, many resources, but why isn't it working? Why can't we get it to work? We're asking for your last two reports, essentially, is data that's not very favorable, and it doesn't look very good. Well, what better way than having that data and giving teachers ways to analyze it? So if we wait till December or January, here we go again. So now we've lost another quarter. So anyway, that's all I had. Did you remember what you wanted to
Yeah,
ask?
I wrote it down. It's just with all my different notes. So Jim, just as far as the school site plans, just for me, I like the format the way it is. I like everybody filling out the same format. It's easier for me to track year by year what school sites are doing, whether their goals are being met, and I like tracking it year over year over year. So for me, I like seeing that, and I like seeing the progress that's being made. So for me, I like the format for the school site plans. I know it's a lot of work. At least everybody's on the same page. For me, I find it so much more helpful going through it. When everybody had their own format, it was very difficult for me to follow year over year what everybody was doing and what were their goals last year, what were their goals this year, are they changing, are they the same, where are we helping the children, so.
So just to respond to that, so, it started last year with streamlining it, I guess is what I would say. So it's not radically changing from this year to last year. We're just trying to get rid of some redundancies. We're trying to not have, 15 goals. We're trying to have 5 goals, or really make the schools really focus in on what are those key areas that they really need to pay attention to. Because like you said, if you have 15 goals, then it's like, okay, what goal was that? So they all do have the same template. Again, the middle school is different from the high school, which isn't from but all the elementary schools have the same template. And what Yvonne did was because all of our schools are using the P3 grant now, the data analysis cycle that they use there, he's built that into there. So you don't have 4 schools using one template and, having to do something different for them. So I think you'll be happy with it. It's not radically different, but it is kind of streamlined to make use of some of the data we're already having to collect for like the P3 grant and that kind of stuff.
Any other questions, comments? Nope. Thank you very much, Superintendent Hoagland. All right, on to our next sorry? Oh, sorry. That is our first action item, so I will call for we need to approve that, so I'd call for a motion.
I move the approval of the item.
Trustee Miller, and a second. Trustee Mack. All in favor? That passes 6 in favor and 1 absent. And onto our second action item is approve the 2016-17 unaudited actual financial report, and Yancey Hawkins, will be one of our presenters. along with Nancy Walker.
Jim's too tall. All right. Thank you, President Cooper. As you noted, I'm here with Nancy Walker, our Director of Business Services. And to be very clear, she did all the work here. As you know, Nancy is just wonderful to work for, and her staff deserve a lot of credit for this. So I wanted to say thank you to Nancy and your staff. With that, I'm going to go through a couple of highlights, and then Nancy's going to go into some of the detail. We also have Jim Soretta here. Jim is the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services from the Marin County Office of Education. He has asked to be here to go over the recent budget review letter that MCOE gave us on Friday. So he'll be available, or he'll want to go over some of that. All right, it's not liking me. Yeah, can you go through? So 2016-17, a great year. I'm good. It was a great year. Some of these pictures show some of the wonderful things that are going on at our schools. In terms of highlights from both the academic and financial, we received about $2.9 million in additional LCFF gap funding from the state. We were able to give a 5% salary increase to our units, which was accounted for about $2.9 million in additional ongoing costs, as well as about $1 million in one-time costs. We continued our staffing levels. We also passed, the community passed Measure G based on the facilities master plan approved by the board last summer, and have approved the first round of projects in consultation with the Bond Implementation Committee. We implemented enrichment and intervention Saturday school to give additional opportunities for our students, as well as recover some attendance and increase ADA revenue. We finalized the solar implementation, saving over $8 million over the next 20 years at our site through a power purchase agreement. And we were able to transfer $1 million to Fund 17 in order to help fund some of the increased costs related to STRS and PERS increases. This is you'll see in the unaudited actuals, just kind of a summary of some of the things. I think the most important thing to note here is just the first one, it's CEA, is the current cost of education expended for classroom compensation. By law, it must equal 55% for a unified district. We are at 59.1% on that. In terms of the unaudited actuals, we ended the year with a fund balance of just over 15 million. And I always think it's important to focus on the unrestricted side of the ledger. And so as you look through it, we finished with a net decrease to the fund balance of about $2 million. But I kind of need to put that into context because there's a couple one-time things going in other directions. So when you're really looking at, where is our structural, where are we structurally on the unrestricted side of the budget, you start at the $2 million, which is where we ended the year. $1 million of that was a transfer to Fund 17. So you have to pull that out. So I'm going to be pulling out all the one-time expenditures to show you where we are structurally. You also have about 500,000 of one-time expenditures. That's at the site level, spending down some of their carryover, as well as at the district level with the one-time 2% for CSEA, which was a couple $100,000. On the other side, you have to add back, there was $1.6 million in one-time revenue at the state level for mandated costs reimbursements, and about an $800,000 LCFF hold harmless for our declining enrollment. So had we been funded on our actual ADA, our LCFF revenue would have been about $800,000 lower. So given that, from an unrestricted side, from a structural standpoint, it was a little over a $2.5 million deficit when you pull out all the one-time items. In terms of, where is our money coming from? I think the important thing, 75% of our money comes from LCFF. We are very lucky from a local revenue side to have about 5% of our revenue coming from a parcel tax, and our PTAs and other local grants, are significant. But in the grand scheme of things, when you look at, where's our biggest driver of revenue, it's LCFF revenue, almost 75% of our revenue. In terms of expenditures, you've heard me say it a lot, we're in a people business. Over 80% of our expenditures come in the form of salaries and benefits for our employees. And one thing that we are continually watching is that benefit column as STRS and PERS rate increases that are either in law or projected by the PERS board are increasing over the next 4 to 5 years and beyond for PERS. For some of the details, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy Walker.
Hi there, good evening. So overall revenues, if we're looking at, we brought the estimated actuals to you in the end of June during budget adoption. And looking at our financials, it appears we have, we under budgeted about $78,000. However, about $675,000 of that, it's not really dollars, it's the STRS on behalf accounting entry that we do. And so what we had budgeted and what the actual are, it's not a contribution, but we recognize it on our government-wide statement. So that tends to skew things a bit. Overall, our LCFF revenues increased about $76,000, and that was a recertification of last year's LCFF dollars. $70,000 showing the decrease on federal. It's due to deferred revenues. We don't recognize them until we actually expend them, so those dollars will carry forward into next year, and we'll recognize it again as New Year money. So looking at the state revenue decrease of $470,000, absent the STRS on behalf entry, we would have actually been, we would have shown we had an increase in revenues, and that was due to, we received $418,000 in the Prop 39 clean energy money. We have a clean energy spending plan, and those dollars are restricted. And on local revenues, by the time we closed the books and did all of our billing and billbacks and invoicing for transportation and facility use, and we received some additional, about $60,000 in addition in redevelopment for an increase of almost $400,000. So that's how we fared on our revenue side. And then looking at expenditures, just taking a look at the scary number in the 3,000s. That again that's the offsetting entry on the STRS on behalf. Do you all remember that? That was part of GASB 68. It was introduced a couple years ago. Really made my financials look ugly because it's a year-end closing entry, and it's based on a prior year and a percentage that the state tells us this is what it is. So overall, if we look at savings in salaries and benefits, it appears to be $908,000 in savings, absent the $675,000 is the STRS on behalf. So we would be ahead $235,000, and that is for the most part, we'll reallocate school and department carryover, school site carryover next year in restricted dollars. And then again on the supplies, looking at, there's 1.3 remaining. If we look at when we go through the components of the ending fund balance, we have about $4 million in restricted dollars that will carry forward next year, and our sites have about $440,000 in unrestricted. So overall, our expenditures appear to be $3 million less, and that is due to the STRS entry and then some unused allocated restricted and site dollars. going forward, looking at our interfund transfers. Thought I could see that far. We transferred out about 1.5 million. 125,000 of that went to our food service fans program. 40,000 is identified in the LCAP as a contribution for the reduced rate, and then 85,000 contribution to cover the 5% increase that all employees received. We transferred $1 million into our special reserve fund for future STRS and PERS increases, and then $308,000 to Fund 21 from redevelopment agency fees. Another item is our contribution to restricted programs. Our total contributions this year were about $8 million. That was an actual increase of $1.2 million from last year. About $850,000 of that was for our own special education program, not including transportation, and another $225,000 in excess costs for students served by MCOE, or the excess cost calculation. So I've provided a list of all the contributions that we typically make, and that was $8 million. So looking at our fund balance, did you want to? Oops. Go ahead.
Looking at our fund balance, I think it's important to, number one, look at the bottom line of about $15.1 million. But as Nancy noted, about $4 million sits in legally restricted money. So that includes lottery funding, which helps pay for textbook adoptions. It includes Proposition 39, which is basically construction funds related to energy efficiency projects, as well as a few other programs, and local grants, including the MCF and Haas family grants. In terms of we have the legally required economic uncertainties of about $2.5 million, and then a few individualized assignments, including the $440,000 of site level carryover that Nancy discussed, and then assignments related to the LCFF gap funding uncertainty and PERS and STRS liability. These, for the most part, are covering the ongoing deficits in the out year. So if we don't change any of our funding or spending patterns, then these assignments will be needed over the next couple of years to cover a cost through 1920. In terms of our balance sheet, I think there's a couple important things to note here. Cash with the treasurer is about $15.8 million. That's about in line with our fund balance. And I think the important thing to note here is the change from where we were a couple of years ago. You probably remember a couple of years ago, our cash was almost down at zero, and our accounts receivable from the state was very high. The state, over the past 3 or 4 years, has pulled back their deferrals that they had significantly. They had, I think it was $11 billion in deferrals to schools 3 or 4 years ago. And the governor, you got to give him some credit for pulling those back over the last 3 or 4 years. So at least from a cash flow standpoint, districts are in a better position, and they don't have to go out and borrow during the summer months, which has changed. In terms of next steps in timeline, as Superintendent Hogaboom noted, the Budget Advisory Committee will be meeting from October through January to come up with budget solutions to determine the level that they will recommend to the superintendent. The first interim report will come to you in December, which will have the final staffing numbers for this year, as well as the revenue numbers related to our enrollment. And then at the last meeting, the board approved a enrollment projection done, and we will see that either in December or January, and that'll help advise the Budget Advisory Committee. In January, the Budget Advisory Committee will finalize their recommendations, and the governor will put out his first draft of the 18-19 budget, and then as well as the staffing will be given out in January, and the board will hear recommendations in February for budget solutions. So with that, President Cooper, did you want to ask questions, or did you want Mr. Soretta from MCOE to
Let me
discuss
ask
first?
the board and see, any questions at this point, and I'm inclined to let Jim come up and talk. Okay, so proceed.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim. Or a long commute.
Both. Well, good evening, and thank you very much, members of the board and Superintendent Hogaboom and Nancy, for allowing me a few minutes of your time this evening to just address some of the budgetary issues and challenges, and I'll even use the word concerns, that we have in terms of what's happening in public education. And when I say it that way, I'm really talking about the industry as a whole. I would say to you that in the last couple of years, as the LCFF model kicked in significant revenue increases for schools across California, for state-funded school districts, we've been able to do some really wonderful things in the industry in terms of addressing needs for kids. But there has been a developing trend now across the state, and now here in Marin County as well. We're starting to see a lot of deficit spending trends develop in districts, in their budgets, in their year-end closing, and in their multi-year projections. And the AB 1200 body of law that we administer at the county office with you at the district level is intended to be an early warning system. That's what it's designed to do, is to bring attention to challenges before they are visited upon us in a fashion that forces us to make really serious and could be potentially damaging adjustments in a relatively short time frame. So that's why we prepared the multi-year financial projections that we are required to prepare, current year budget +2. The county office, I can report to you, we were able to approve the district's budget for the 2017-18 year, but we do and have observed a significant deficit spending condition. There's, based on the report here, I can see the deficit spending condition existed in the 16-17 year. The budget and multi-year projection anticipates that trend will continue, such that 72% of what your general fund balance is as of this point in time is reduced down to what we would label as the minimum state reserve 3 years from now, in the end of the 1920 school year. So if I were standing here in front of you at this time next year and nothing had been done, you'd be looking at a qualified budget, a qualified certification, which is the district's way of saying to the community and to the county office that you may not be able to meet your financial obligations in the current year +2. That would be a year from now. So the purpose of sort of sharing with you tonight is to just help raise awareness, as if you needed to have any awareness raised. I'm sure that's not necessary, but to sort of underscore the message that we share your concern, and we want to partner with you in any way we can to assist you in addressing the deficit condition that you have. I want to commend you, by the way, for taking a very important first step, and that is the formation of a budget advisory committee. We see that as a very strong positive. We saw the calendar that you've approved, another very strong positive. It shows commitment to the resolution of the challenge. We know that there's a first interim budget report that will be presented. The committee will not have completed its work by that time. We wouldn't expect the committee to have completed its work that quickly. But there is I believe the calendar does anticipate that somewhere around that second interim timeframe, in the March timeframe, there will be something that I might label as a deficit reduction plan in the works at that point, and that is the timeframe by which we will be paying extra particular attention, and hopefully the work that you're doing now will yield some very positive results. I didn't want to take too much of your time. I know you're acutely aware of these things, but I do want just to come here tonight, and thank you for allowing me to come here tonight. And I'll be happy to address any questions you might have about our role and anything else that may be on your mind.
All right, thank you, Jim, very much. And I do want to stress the appreciation of the district that you are here and kind of underscoring this issue, which we are very aware of. And trustees, let's start with Trustee Mack and then Trustee Nell.
Thanks for coming, Jim. Appreciate it. Very helpful to understand looking forward. So appreciate that. To what degree would you say you would share this same assessment with other districts in the county?
I would say that we have a total of 18 school districts of all manner, size, type, funding models. We really have a variety, and so it's not necessarily fair to compare everybody exactly the same, but it is fair to say that there are 4 to 5 districts, I would say, in similar conditions to Novato. Some of them are state-funded like yourselves. Some of them are locally funded basic aid school districts. You all have the same most significant challenge, and that is, I shouldn't say the most significant, but it seems to be, and that is the rising costs of pension contributions. Their pension contributions have been increased significantly in the last couple of years and will continue to increase in the next several years to address what developed over literally generations of underfunding of the systems. And those contributions, those increased contributions, are demanding up to half of new dollars that are coming your way. So that's not unique to a state-funded school district. It's also a condition of some of the locally funded school districts. So about 3 to 4, maybe 5 districts are in that same condition.
All right, Trustee Nell, and then Trustee Miller.
Well, I'll just want to welcome back to Novato, Jim.
Thank you.
It's always good to see you. You are a former chief financial officer, and I appreciated your time here, working here, and everything you do for us at the county level. It's hard to thank you for the sobering warning, but I think it's important to point out it's a fiduciary responsibility of the county to make sure that the school districts within its jurisdiction are counting their nickels and dimes and being responsible. So let me make it simple. What do we do?
Well, it's interesting you would ask that question. I actually kind of anticipated that question tonight. Really, what we like to say at the county office is our role is to provide that fiscal oversight you just acknowledged. One thing we try not to do is to be prescriptive relative to the exact kinds of measures that need to be taken, because each district's unique. Each district has its own challenges, its own goals and objectives. We don't pretend to know better than you do about what you need to make your schools function at the highest level. However, it's obvious, of course. I think Yancey used the term in his presentation, we are in a people business. 80% of our dollars do go into staffing. So it's virtually impossible, in my sense of things, without some incredible revenue increase that might somehow appear, which I'm saying like winning the lottery or something. I don't know what that might be. Staffing tends to be the one place that we have to address to get those kinds of structural deficits. We're talking, as I mentioned before, 70% reduction in fund balance over 3 years. It's almost impossible. And I would say too, that there are other priorities, I'm sure, that will be presented to you as a school board and as a district. with every potential increase in expenditure that might be incurred over the next 3 years, there'll have to be an equal and offsetting decrease. Otherwise, it simply adds to the challenge. So.
Yeah, you want to wrap? Yeah.
Thank you for buy low, sell high. No, that's great. I appreciate that. I've known Jim a long time, so I'm sorry. I'm tired.
Oh, that's
but,
okay. That's all right.
Jim knows what I'm thinking. So here's a, let me put it this way. A lot of the times when we just had a major recession, and so you basically you could look across the sea and say, well, if we can just make these cuts, tighten down, hold the line here and there, we're going to get to this point where the state is actually giving us restorative funding back to 2008 levels. That's what they're calling it, while simultaneously assessing us for identical amount to pay down the STRS-PERS liability problem. So essentially, we're getting all this new money that we can't spend on anything but the pension liability. So, in your opinion, is there a other side of this problem? I mean, do we have to knuckle down and save our pennies for a couple of years before this problem's over? Or are we talking, should we just get serious about this? It's 10 years and we might want to close schools or do something like that.
Well, there's really two phenomena that are developing, 2 or 3 actually. One is the state's budget is unduly reliant upon capital gain revenue. Capital gain revenue is driven by stock market gains. The stock market is going gangbusters right now and has been since the election last November. So there's no doubt the state of California is going to enjoy some short-term capital gain revenue bumps.
Jim, can I stop you right there?
Yes.
The stock market's going gangbusters, and this pension liability problem is a result of not having earned enough money on the set aside. Mm-hmm. What's the problem? I mean, there's a disconnect here. I mean, it seems like the stock market's going up, but the pension liability problem doesn't seem to be gaining at a fast enough rate. So again, you're saying it's two things. Is anyone predicting an end to this to the STRS-PERS issue? I mean, we're not going to change maybe we will change how the state relies on taxation, primarily, as you say, on capital gains and not on personal income. But what about the STRS and PERS issues? Anyone projecting an end to the?
Well, the state of California's current reform efforts that resulted in these increased rates are designed to reduce the unfunded liabilities in the systems over the next 30 years. And that's based upon the most latest information they have regarding their assumptions around how much stock market will earn and how much liabilities will go up and when people retire and so forth. Woe be it for me to project anything better than what messages they're sending out there, but I do hope personally, on many levels, that they've done enough. And that is my only real fear, to be frank, is that the liabilities have been appropriately identified, the assets have been appropriately adjusted over time, and that the two shall meet 30 years from now. So only time will tell.
All right, Trustee Nell, and then I'd like to give Trustee Miller a chance,
So,
and we have public comment too.
From a planning perspective, we take our budgets on 3 years at a time. Are you saying that basically for the next 30 years, this is about as bad as it's going to get? So we should take our 3-year planning intervals based on this is as bad as it's going to get, barring natural disaster or some other serious economic downturn, or you're saying that we should just face up to this reality and get serious about a 30-year problem and try to figure out how to operate in a new way?
Well, the state's actuaries have said basically that this will solve the problem over that 30-year time frame. So as we incur those increased contributions over the next 4 or 5 years to the year 2021, on some level, that should be it. Whenever they're raised to that level that they've projected, that should be the end of those kinds of increases. Of course, 2021, if we're still in economic expansion mode, we would be about the 12th or 13th year of economic expansion, and there's never been such an economic expansion. So somewhere in that time frame as well, there's every expectation that the economy will slow, that the recession is on the way. So while we will get some relief that those increased contributions will cap at some point, there's right about the same time, there's likely to be a recession. So we don't have a lot of good news to share for you, and at some point in time, you're probably going to ask me to stop talking, because if you have anything of a positive outlook to share here.
Will you come back in 30 years?
Yeah.
No,
Absolutely.
I think you're helping us to understand how to approach the problem from a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year period of time, and that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to do anything too short term that's going to get us in more trouble later, and I don't want to overreact either if it's going to be. It's going to take care of itself. So I appreciate the input.
Ross?
So I appreciate the conversation. Thank you very much, Derek. Jim, it's good to see you. So the additional fees, I want to be clear, the additional fees that we contribute to the pension program that's going to fund your retirement and my daughter's retirement and a bunch of people in this room's retirement are increasing as a percentage of base salary. But in 2020, or whenever this program, when the rate increase stops, it doesn't go back down. It comes up to a, 15% of, I don't know what the total percentage is, but it stays at that high level. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, that is our understanding of how this is intended to work, right?
So if it, on average, you should be putting away 15% of your salary to retirement if you had a 401k, we've been putting away 10%, and that wasn't enough, and now we got to put away 20% to make up for the last 30 years we didn't put enough in. We got to put in 20% in for the next 30 years at a high level continuously.
Yes.
So,
That's
okay,
the
so,
notion.
and the industries that didn't do that, General Motors went bankrupt and closed their, and the primary impact was to retirees. U.S. Steel went bankrupt. United Airlines declared bankruptcy. Many private sector companies that had the same problem solved the problem by liquidating their retirees' pension programs, and they were faced with, a revised retirement program. And this basically solves the problem by keeping the promise that those pension plans initially made and that you relied on and my daughter relies on for their career. Okay. So it's going to go up and stay up. That's the net. The next question is, what do we need to do as a school district given the circumstances we're in? And you pointed out that 80%, Yancey put it on the chart, 80% of our cost between bargaining units and benefits has to do with money that goes in somebody's personal benefit program, either the salary they buy groceries with or the money that goes into a pension program or health benefits. So you're not going to, so the budget we adopted, I believe, Yancey, we were 3%. Our budget was spending 3% in down, where we were overspending 3%.
Yes, just over 3%.
So over 3%, and that didn't include any bargaining unit negotiation that's still in progress, and we're going to have that conversation. So we have a big nut to crack. And what I hear you telling us is, I'm glad to see you have a process. You have to hit your dates. You have to find a solution. This is not going to pass muster a year from now if you don't, and in 3 years from now, you're going to be in a takeover target unless you crack this nut.
Pretty good
The
summary.
good news is, with your help in the past, this board has done exactly that. We've solved the problem. And with a lot of screaming and shouting and choices that nobody wanted to make, but we as a community, the Novato community sat down and solved the problem.
Yes.
And we can do it again.
Yes, as educators, we're very good at that. We're very good at weathering storms and seeing our way to the far end of the dark tunnel and seeing the light coming our way. And we eventually do make it. We are in a boom and bust economy cycle in California. All the taxes that fund schools are largely dependent on the economic cycles. So unfortunately, when things are starting to turn the downside, we find ourselves in these kind of
It's
positions.
not flat property tax,
Not
it's capital
whatsoever.
gains. So capital gains does
Exactly.
this where property taxes would do that.
Yes.
So this is the nature of being a public sector
Yes.
agency and employee going forward.
Yes.
So I'm thrilled that you came down and reminded us of the circumstances that we live in, the nature of the agency statewide, and our duty as a board to manage the fiscal responsibility. And I hope we don't see you a year from now, because we're going to solve this problem. But it's going to be there's going to be some pain. And I think that's what we all need to sign up for. It's going to be a painful exercise. So I don't have anything more. This is just a good prelude for the next year of conversation.
Jim, would you mind staying around a little bit, or are you pressed for time?
No,
I do
I'm
have
fine.
one public comment, and then
Sure.
I think we probably will have a couple more questions. Okay. If you don't mind. In public comment, if it's all right with the board, I'll go to public comment now. And Aaron Fix, if you'd like to come up. Greetings.
Hi, thank you. Aaron Fix, President of Novato Federation of Teachers. So you're looking for some answers for things to do. Well, if you look at our comparable districts, we're spending about $1.2 million more in our administrative budget, and an additional $1.25 million more in administrative salaries, both in terms of more administrators and higher paid administrators. So that's about $2.5 million of ongoing costs. So that's a good chunk of money. In terms of our reserves, we are ranked about the 15th percentile, the top 15th percentile in the state. These challenges face every single school district in the state, many of which are much more fragilely placed. So those school districts are going to start hitting the rocks. We talk about potentially us getting to the place of a qualified budget. I don't want to throw our business department under the bus, but I've been keeping an eye on 3-year projected ending fund balances for 5, 6, 8 years. And generally the 3-year projection is off by between 60 and 80%. And it's always in the same direction. And so people come back and say, yes, that's because we changed things. Absolutely. We need to change things. But I don't put much credence in saying that the sky is falling. The sky's been falling pretty much every year that I've been working here. And it's been falling for most of the years that I've been working for the union. So our comparable districts manage to compensate their teachers better. We're at about, the teachers on average are at about 96%, 4% less than the average of our comparables. And our top administrators are about 4% more, at about 104%. And that's looking mostly at principals, because those are the ones that we have solid data for. So there's some sort of structural deficiencies in the way that we allocate our money. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Aaron. And bring it back to the board now. Any questions for Yancey or Jim? I have a question, if I could go for Jim, just to kind of you've been talking about, and thank you once again, this is excellent to have you here, and just kind of, it's an interesting position we're in, and we're not alone, and we just need to fix it. Can you explain what a qualified budget means?
Yes, there's actually 2 2 levels of approval that a budget will go through in every given year. When the budget is adopted, which yours was by July 1st, which is the budget we just finished reviewing, there's actually 3 different approvals we can consider. We can approve it, we can conditionally approve it, or we can disapprove it. We were able to approve it because you met the criteria, and the criteria is basically that you're able to maintain your minimum state reserve through the multi-year projection. Then when we move into our interim reports, we have 2 different levels of certification, actually 3, positive, qualified, and negative. A positive certification is defined as being able to meet your financial obligations in the current and 2 years, same as approved budgets. A qualified certification is defined in the code as may not be able to meet your financial obligations in the current or next 2 years. And generally that's demonstrated by an inability to achieve the 3% reserve requirement somewhere during that 3-year time frame. And then a negative certification is that you're basically, the code definition is saying that you will not be able to meet your financial obligations in the current or following. It's not 2 years out, current or following year. And generally when you're at that point, should be a lot of red bells and whistles going off and a lot of concern being expressed. Because at that point in time, you're generally, that if you meet that criteria, you're looking at a cash flow issue which may require a state loan. So that is serious business at that point.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Trustees, any other? Okay, I just wanted to give everyone a chance. Nobody else? Trustee Nell? It's all yours. Trustee Nell? Yeah.
Mr. Sreda, on page 2 of your 7-page letter to us, you have an illustration that shows the estimated ending fund balance for our unrestricted general fund. It shows a couple of past years, this pending year and moving forward. In your opinion, is there any reason for me and as a trustee with the fiduciary responsibility of this district to deem these numbers in your report and the direction that they're going is to be inaccurate?
No. The information that the budget is built upon is basically an authorization to staff to spend. The information that the budget is built upon in terms of revenue is the best estimate of revenue receipts. There are always numbers that will change as you move through a given fiscal year. But the numbers that have been presented and approved by the board are basically an authorization to move forward with that spending plan. So we have to assume that this is the set of numbers that you will experience if nothing is done and the time moves forward. I think the notion is, I think it was stated already, that we tend to do things. We do react, we do respond. And that's why we maintain our position so we don't find ourselves in these positions of being right up against those minimum reserve levels. And I will share with you that you mentioned earlier I was with the Novato Unified School District many years ago. I think it was this board right through here.
Good point.
You may remember this, Ross, but I actually had my first budget that I turned into the board. Actually, it was year-end closing, unaudited actuals. And we had 2.95% in ending fund balance. We were just below the 3%. And so what happens? Districts find themselves in conditions where they are dealing with absolute minimums. So I think that prudent responsibility is to work with the numbers that you're presented and address them accordingly.
And could I just put an exclamation point after that, and on page 6 of your report, you, just to underscore that, you say, "The district is well advised to maintain reserve levels at far higher levels than the state required minimums to ensure sufficient cash for operating
Yes,
purposes." So,
yes. Yeah, the minimum state reserve is the state's standard for a minimum reserve, but
Right.
there's other standards that are much higher than that.
so just to reiterate, Jim, if you would, if you would, thanks, Trustee Nell. If theoretically we wanted to increase expenditures in Fund X, you're recommending we reduce some expenditure in some other fund somewhere,
Well,
moving forward.
to keep this projection from looking even more dire than it does, that would obviously have to be the minimum posture you'd have to take.
That was a rhetorical, but I just wanted to
Yes.
underscore that as,
Yes.
that's moving forward, that's
Yes.
really critical. Okay, all right.
So,
Trustee Miller.
thank you for remembering what a 2.9% reserve looks like when the state requires 3%. The net effect, from my memory, having lived it, was you are all of a sudden making decisions based on the circumstances this week. You can't look ahead a month, you can't look ahead a semester, you can't look ahead to anything. You are in desperation mode. We went out, I think finally for a set of a COP to take care of some building issues. We made choices that were driven by short-term financial constraints that were not in the overall long-term best interest of the district, and it's what we had to do because we as a board had allowed the financial circumstances of the district to get right up against the very strict limit, and so it was, you make bad decisions is the net of it. You make bad decisions, and 3% is something like 3 weeks salary or 2 weeks salary. It's not even a full payroll. So you're running desperation to make sure the accounting department's counting dollar bills in a box in the back room to make sure that they have the money to make the next payroll at the end of the month when the checks come out. It is no place to be. Having been there, it is no place to be. We need to have, for anybody who hasn't done that, we need to set a standard for this board, for this district, that allows us to have normal business. I think John McCain said normal process. You can't be so close to the edge that you're doing desperation acts all the time. So I have no intention of ever getting there again. It was too painful the first time, and we learned, and it isn't good for the students, it isn't good for the faculty, and it isn't good for the community.
And I have one more question. I think 2 more questions, but I think they're probably for you, Yancey. In Jim's, or the MCUE's report, there's a mention of Prop 39, clean energy, and jobs creation funding has been extended until February 2018. All funds must be encumbered by June 2019. And it says it goes on to say that we're carrying a $500,000 budget or balance on that. What's that all about?
So Proposition 39 came around, so there's, just to make things extra confusing, that Proposition 39 means 2 things. The first relates to a bond. The Measure G funding that we did was a Prop 39 bond. It also, in that same bond funding, related to, charter school around their facilities. That's not the Prop 39 we're talking about. Prop 39 was about 4 years ago, and it closed a tax loophole for companies, and about half of the money that went there went to the state's general fund, and half went to fund clean energy projects. And so when I mean clean energy projects, when we're replacing heaters at school sites with more efficient heaters. When the biggest one is lighting, when we're taking our old LCD lighting, when we're putting in incandescent lighting. Yep, the ones that
before its time.
And moving to lighting, like you've all been, everyone's been putting LCD lights in their house. It can do some other things, but the board has approved a plan that can only be spent on specific energy. The only thing is, it actually does fund a portion of our energy conservation position, but that's the only position that it can hold. We have a stipend for an employee who does all of our energy conservation. But all other projects have to be approved by the state CEC. And those we have an approved plan that mostly relates to HVAC improvements at our sites and lighting projects at our sites as well.
So we are, in fact, going to put that money to good use, it sounds like.
Yes,
Okay, good.
Mark Silva and his team are working hard on that.
Great. One more question for you, and it's regarding food service. And in your report,
Yep.
you mentioned the $125,000 and some change transfer to the Fund 13. Is that is that something we can ever see brought under control, or is that what we're going to be expecting?
So I apologize, but
I
I'm
know
going to give you two sides of the answer. The first thing, absolutely, we need to bring that under control. That's $80,000 that's going out of our general fund that's not being able to be spent in the classroom or helping maintain the classrooms or do other professional development things. I will say that over the last couple of years, given the increase in state funding, especially from 13-14 through 16-17, the district has been able to give some fairly sizable compensation increases, as well as those PERS increased costs, which in some ways, I don't want to say unfairly, but disproportionately impact food services, because food services, for the most part, is run in a similar way to a business, and usually revenues drive all of your compensation and things like that. In this case, all of our compensation in that fund are in the same way as our general fund, which are driven by increases at the state level, meaning the LCFF increases from 13-14 to 16-17 are significantly higher than the increase in the money we get for participation in the National School Lunch Program at the federal level. So while revenues have gone up a little bit in that program, expenses have gone up a lot more in that program. So it's a tough problem, but I will say that we do need to get it under
It's
control.
$125,000,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And
Just
that's
one thing.
money we could be using in other ways.
Right. I know we've talked about it lots. All right. I'm going to thank you. For bring it back to the board. Trustee Nell, hello.
Just to follow up on the food services aspect, I appreciate your explanation. I mean, essentially, we've got a hybrid here that's expected to, on revenues, your revenues are limited to matching school lunch and the realities of what our customers can pay. Yet at the same time, we have to rise all boats with our bargaining units, and so the employee costs continue to go up, especially STRS and PERS are examples. So, but in addition to that, I think food services is something that I'm not saying we don't want to be careful, we don't want to run a tight ship, we don't want to invest in things that are going to keep us efficient, but I think it's the type of thing that's necessary public service. We need to be able to provide meals, especially to those kids that don't have access to them on a regular basis at home. So I don't have a problem with an encroachment in the general fund, I guess is what I'm saying, as long as we keep an eye on it. The question I had for you, and at the very beginning of your report, and I can't find it exactly where it is, but I believe there's a page that talks about where our dollars go on a percentage basis, and we're required to have that dollar amount be below 55, and we're at 59 or something. Could you explain that number one more time in a little more detail?
Yeah, so there's a couple of ratios that you need to keep by ed code. One of them is the percent of current cost of education expended for classroom compensation. And so that relates to instructional employees, both certificated and classified, who are in the classroom. It varies if you're a elementary, high school, or unified school district, but for a unified school district, the percentage is 55%. That is the requirement at a state level. Our expenditures exceed that. They're at 59%.
So if I were looking to find excessive administrative salaries, if we had excessive administrative salaries, wouldn't the pressure be on this number here directly? This number would be lower if our, not above the requirement, but it would actually be lower if we had non-classroom dollars in excess of the requirement or what's average. I mean, where would I go about finding excessive high administrative salaries, dollars spent outside the classroom if I wanted to go through this budget? This is the number I would go to, right?
It's one number. I also think you can look at our expenditures by function. So we usually talk about our expenditures by type. So certificated salaries, classified salaries, benefits, supplies. Those are by type of things. We also do reporting, and it's in the longer, and we can actually do some more reporting if the board would like that, around function, which goes, instead of by type, it goes what is the expenditure related to. So the 1,000s instead of certificated salaries in function is instruction. And the 8,000s are plant and maintenance. So our maintenance department, our custodial, our grounds are, in the 8,000s. Our 3,000s are support services. So it's another way to look for that, and it's included in our SACS file, that large file that's included. But we can do additional reporting on that if the board would appreciate that.
Well, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I appreciate the comment, because if I were trying to compare apples to apples with our district amongst other unified school districts, and I was interested in breaking out the dollars in the classroom versus dollars spent on administrative salaries outside the classroom, et cetera, this state budget format gives me the ability to compare my district apples to apples to almost any other district in the state. And it certainly would help me to identify if we are a red flag, if we were an anomaly and somehow had oversized or unreasonable administrative salary numbers. So I just wanted to point out the fact that the facts exist for anyone who wants to get them, and if they want to get apple-to-apple comparisons versus one person's budgetary opinion versus another, we could go here and we could prove the points specifically. I had another question for you. There was a comment about comparables in other school districts. What are we talking about? We're talking about other school districts that we compare ourselves to, and the slang term for that is comparable?
Yeah, so in our contract, and Mr. Koska can correct me if I'm wrong, in our contract, we've agreed to a group of unified school districts with relatively similar populations, income levels, size, that we use as comparable districts. As to the data, that would be comparables.
So it's a group of districts like us, and there are some that do spend more here and some that spend less there, and we're kind of in the middle sometimes, and we're kind of above the middle sometimes, depending on whether you're comparing salaries, insurance payments, facility cost. Is that the idea of this comparable list?
That's the idea, and I believe, and Mr. Koska can correct me if I'm wrong, that last year was the first year that we agreed on a new set, or two. Thank you. This is our second year with this as a list of comparable districts.
So it's a list of districts that both the bargaining units and the administration can sit down to the table and say, we agree to use these districts as comparisons.
Yes.
Okay. So we have that list, and then one of the values that I see in this particular list, if we see other districts that are similar to ours that are able to do more with less, I really would want to know how they do that. because it's not magic, right? I mean, essentially, there must be something they do differently than we do in order to accomplish a higher rate of pay per employee, for instance, correct? I mean, when I look at that comparison list, there are in fact school districts similar to ours that pay their certificated more than we do. I want to know how they do that. Do you have any idea how they do that? Have we ever studied that? Is it that they have larger classrooms sizes? Is it that they do more work for the larger pay? I mean, I'm just trying to get a feel for, I would love to know how they do it, because we should copy it, because then we could pay our employees more if we did what they did. So is that information available to us?
Information is available, and every district does some different things, and every district makes decisions. But yes, there is wide class size differences there are significant differences in the health and welfare benefits that are provided to certain employees.
So if we really wanted to see how they paid people more, we could just really dig in deep and see how they do it.
Yes.
And I think that I would, as a board, as a trustee, I would really like to know how they do it, because nothing would please me more than to be able to compensate our people at a higher rate. So, quite frankly, now that this is budget time and it's time to talk about this, I think I'd be interested in a public report on these comparables and how some are more successful at it than we are. Let's see how they do it. That's my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board's thinking.
Thank you, Trustee Nell. Trustee Miller, you had a comment?
Jim, I was looking at reviewing your letter while Yancy was answering some questions, and I looked on page 6, top paragraph, cash flow, and the last sentence says, the district is well advised to maintain reserve levels at far higher levels than the state required minimum to ensure sufficient cash for operating purposes. And then I turned over the page and I looked at page 7, and it says cap on reserves, which I believe is a state law. It says a cap on reserve is twice the minimum required, is only triggered under a series of infrequent conditions. Additionally, if triggered, districts may request an exemption from the cap from the county superintendent of schools. And then that paragraph finishes, in all circumstances, we continue to encourage districts to maintain higher than minimum reserves. Mm-hmm. So my question to you, in light of the advice, is do you have a measure of the reserve that the 20 districts or 23 districts in Marin County maintain, so we can see where we stand?
We can certainly provide that information. It's readily available. It's public information.
Oh, okay. So maybe Yancy can do the work and you're off the hook.
Well, I just don't know the answer. I can tell you that they're easily in the double digits, well beyond the 3% minimum that the state requires. And you mentioned a little earlier, there's an operating standard put out by the GFOA, Governmental Finance Officers Association, that public agencies should carry at least 2 months worth of payroll in reserve.
So that kind of guidance is where I'm looking to see if the industry's got something to advise us other than the state law of 3%.
Yes, there's just data on what is, but there's also that particular standard, which is routinely cited in many best practices in the industry relative to what should be maintained. When I talk about 2 months payroll, about 8% per month, so it's somewhere in the neighborhood of a 16 to 17% reserve level. And then from there, it's really driven by local need. What other kinds of risks do you identify? What other kinds of challenges do you have? So we don't identify a particular number in here very purposefully, but those are some of the.
So I guess I'm asking our fiscal our CFO is it appropriate for us to for you to bring forward a policy or a direction or guidance for us, so we have something that's more than, I mean, the conversation we're having, we don't have a set of standards we're comparing to or other districts, or I'd like to be able to put my feet on the ground a little easier than I can right now. So I don't know how you think we should proceed in that area.
I think it's always fiscally prudent to have a fund balance policy. I know this district has had a target of about 15% that they've used over the last several years. I think that's in the range. As Mr. Soretta noted, the governmental finance officers recommends about 16%. So we're in the ballpark for normal. But Jim does note a couple items. You do need to really focus on, your exact, needs. There are districts that, need to carry a much higher balance than that. I'm not necessarily saying that for us, but I think somewhere in that 15 to 16%. But that's a board decision, and but I would support bringing a policy forward.
I'll leave that for staff right now, but I think that's an interesting.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Any more comments? Okay.
I just want to, I'd like to support what Derek suggested, getting into the comparables. I think being a numbers guy, I can spin any store I want just by picking the right numbers. And without seeing all of the numbers that make the whole package, I really can't tell what's going on. So I think it'd be very, very useful for us to break down the comparables into both the components of the costs that each of the districts are pushing out, as well as, really just the costs and how they all mix in. So while it might be higher in one place, it might be lower in another place, and I'd like to really understand that. So I think it'd be a helpful exercise for us.
Thank you. And are we kind of, as a board, in agreement on that issue? Because I'd like to see if staff could put something together for us. Yes, that Derek just raised. The issue Derek raised.
I think it depends on the amount of work that goes into it, but I certainly would ask and have them.
We'll talk about it at agenda planning, maybe. Let's do that.
Yeah, I think it may,
Yeah.
I mean, if it's how much work it is.
Revisit it. Okay, thank you. Thanks, everybody. This is a great team effort from all of our presenters. Thank you very much. This is an action item, so I would, all right. Trustee Miller's the first, and Trustee Scott's the second. All in favor? It's a resounding 6 in favor and 1 absent. And as I was saying, I wanted to thank Yancey Hawkins, Nancy Walker, and Jim Soretta for helping us out on this. Great job. A lot of work went into it. All right. And then on to our third discussion action item, which is to approve award the contract to Carducci and Associates for site planning, layout, and design at the San Marin High School Public Address System, commonly known as the PA system. And Yancey Hawkins. Oh, Mike Woolard.
Bait and switch.
Okay.
Evening, trustees. So this evening, here before you to briefly discuss and seek approval to award a contract to Carducci and Associates for the site planning, layout, and design of the San Marin High School Public Address System at their stadium. As you know, on May 30th of this year, the board approved the San Marin High School Public Address project in the amount of $245,000 from Fund 22, which is the Measure G bond fund. And as part of that, we went ahead and selected Carducci and Associates, which is a local landscape architect, to design the public address system, which again includes the site planning, detailed design, layout, and sound study. A special note from the final environmental impact report, the EIR for San Marin High School, mitigation measure N2 states the district will design and operate the new public address system to not exceed an L5 sound level of 55 decibels at the surrounding residences to the extent possible. In order to address this, part of this contract includes $25,000 to a acoustics consultant specialist, RGD Acoustics Incorporated, that will not only help with the sound study, but ensure the PA system is designed to the right specs and also performs in compliance with what we stated in our EIR, specifically with mitigation measure N2. Again, Fund 22 in the amount of $50,000, and superintendent and staff recommend board approval to award this contract to Carducci and Associates to design and build the public address system at San Marin High School. And with that,
Thanks, Mike.
glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? Trustee Nell?
Yeah, just up front, I'm going to support the recommendation, but I had a question about, maybe this is long-term, and I don't even think it's Carducci's role, but essentially, what is the capital replacement set-aside that we're going to have for this system? Maybe that's a chief financial officer question, because we know this 50 grand isn't going to last forever, so on an annualized basis, are we going to be socking this away in a designated reserve? Because it's been my experience through the years, PA systems at high schools tend to break down, disappear, and then aren't necessarily replaced. So I'd like to have some assurances after making this kind of an investment in this kind of a high fidelity system that we're going to take care of it and replace it as need, the parts and components as needed.
And I want to just be clear, the work revolves around poles as well, and speaker systems, and so the total cost of the project isn't the cost of replacement. But yeah, I believe that it would be fiscally prudent to put aside a small amount. I will say, with the exception of the football, the youth football, that outside organizations will not be using the PA system, so we won't have the benefit of using potentially use fees, like we can sometimes use with potentially the second athletic field to bring up funds for replacement. But we will be coming up with ways to replace the system and the speakers when needed.
Will this be a site budget issue in the future, or will this be a district thing? I think the operational aspect is kind of what we're talking about. So I guess painting the poles is going to have to be done in the future, but if a circuit breaks or a wire gets bent the wrong way, I don't know the answer to that question. I just want to, I'm not going to hold anything up, and I just want to know, does that become the site's responsibility, or does the district?
So in terms of overall maintenance of electrical, those kind of systems, that would be the district's responsibility. We put in the system. We would take responsibility for maintaining it. We've typically moved for, if the district puts in the system, it takes the responsibility of maintaining it. If it is maybe a locally, like a small garden or another kind of facility, then the site will put in, or potentially something put in by the boosters or another fundraising organization.
Okay, last question, Mr. President. These are they're called PAs because they're public address systems. Is there any mandatory safety requirement if we're going to have a public address system and an emergency comes into play? I mean, is there any liability that the thing isn't working and it should be working, or we just don't have to worry about that sort of thing?
I think we're always responsible in an emergency situation to safely bring all people out of our stadium. It's one of the reasons that DSA has their regulations around ADA access, not just in, it's also out, as well as, I don't know of a specific liability that we have, but we do have general liability in an emergency situation, and having an effective PA system obviously would be positive for that.
All right, thank you, Trustee Millerick, and then Trustee.
So
Mack.
I think this contract makes sense, but I am concerned that we're talking about doing set aside for maintenance for PA systems out of the same budgets that we're going to use. We just got through talking about we're 3% in the hole. We're talking about not being able to, or difficult circumstances with our employee base. And the next topic is let's set aside a pile of money for a PA system that might break. I think that we should have a deferred maintenance program that serves all the purposes of the school. If it's a broken toilet or a broken PA system or a door's caved in or a car's run into a pole and we got to repair it, there's safety issues. I think having special reserve funds for pet projects that step in front of the money we used to pay we use for compensation is completely misguided in the way we manage this district. I just don't get it. We just got through talking about how tight money is, and now we want to set aside a pile of money for a pet project. It makes no sense to me.
All right, thank you. And then, hold on, Trustee Mack, you were next.
All right, I'll come back.
Sure.
Well,
Trustee, no?
It wouldn't be the first time I befuddled Trustee.
It wouldn't be, because
So let me clarify, because I want the rest of the board certainly to know that I was never had any intention of creating a special pet project fund. I simply asked questions as to how these issues would be addressed, whether it's district, site. And obviously, it's going to be whether it's a pole or a window. It's all the same to me, Ross. I didn't mean anything by it, so we good?
Good, I'm good.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, you two. Trustee Mack, and then I'd like to wrap it up.
Yep. So as you know, I'm kind of familiar with the existing system at both schools. And so my question is, this cost, and like everybody else, I support this. I want to get it done. But I'm a little confused on really the scope in terms of there's already a system there. It works, but it's not governed. It's not properly programmed. It needs a better speaker placement approach, i.e., eliminate the big speakers and go with a lot more smaller speakers. I get that. Is that what we're talking about here? Are we going to keep the existing head unit and all the programming that comes with it? Or are we going to take that out and start all over?
So, so part of this is around the sound study and the work that RGD will be doing as part of this to determine, as part of our EIR, we're required to design the system to be at or below 55 decibels, and at some, there's details in there about that. And so RGD will be doing that work. It actually notes to the extent possible. But it likely will not be able to be done with the current system, definitely not with the speakers as of right now. You did note what is a very good point. In order to lower the decibel level, you really have to have more and directionally placed speakers, as the board noted when they went to the Hillsdale High School. That system had many more speakers and directionalized.
I'm not seeing RG, I'm seeing Zyger. And you're thinking RG in the press box. Okay.
No, it's included under Zyger's contract, the electrical. The 25, it's a subcontractor under Zyger.
Okay.
The 25,000 is for sound design services.
Okay. And then, so I'm seeing that there's 25 grand in there for the PA system itself. I'm hoping that's a conservative number, because if it turns out the head unit, it's a very complex, very capable head unit. I've seen it work at Novato, and I don't see why it can't work at San Marin, to be honest.
So unfortunately, the 25,000 is just for sound design.
This is all just planning, Greg.
This is just planning.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right.
Always helps to get that question answered.
All right, if there are no further comments, I'd like to, this is an action item, so we'll need to approve this. If someone would like to make a motion to approve the award of the contract to Carducci and Associates for the site planning.
I'll move or second.
Okay. Trustee Nell is the first, and Trustee Mack second. How's that? Good? All in favor? Passes 6 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you very much. All right, on to item D, approve verification for requirements for a provisional internship permit. S. Nicholson and Chris Koska.
Hi, thank you for waiting for the Chris Koska Show. Thank you, everybody out there in the audience. Yes. So, just recently we had a resignation of a biology teacher at Novato High School. We were lucky that we were able to find a replacement. As you know, this is a very difficult time to be searching for a replacement for any teacher in any subject area, particularly in science. Summer Nicholson was working for us as a substitute teacher, actually, and we were able to offer her this position. She qualifies for a provisional internship permit. In order for us to make that happen, I have to let you know that she qualifies for that. We have to talk about it in public session. Want to make sure that you understand that Summer will be given all the resources we can to make sure that she's successful. I think always the most important support is support from the teacher next door, but also through BITSA, through our coaches, through our instruction division here in the district office. So we're going to throw all our resources we can at Summer to help her be successful. And the superintendent and staff recommend approval of the verification of requirements for a provisional internship permit for Summer Nicholson.
First, trustee Miller, second, trustee Scott, to approve verification of requirements for a provisional internship permit. I have one question.
Yeah.
How long is this open-ended? How long does that permit last? Is it the school year?
Typically, it's a year. It can be extended 1 year if necessary for credentialing.
By this board once again? Okay. All right, I have a first and a second. All in favor? That passes 6 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. Now our item E is to approve verification of requirements for provisional internship permit for Mr. or Miss T. Crocker.
Miss Tracy Crocker.
Tracy Crocker.
Yes. So this has been a bit of a tough luck position. We offered this position a couple of times through the summer, the social cognition program at Linwood. And finally, we found a qualified person who is ready to take on this job. Her name is Tracy Crocker. Again, just like with Summer, we have to talk about this in public session. I have to let you know that she meets all the requirements for the provisional internship permit. Again, we will throw all the resources we have available at her, including the special ed department in this case, and BITSA, and all our other teachers in special ed out there at Linwood. I think she's going to be in good hands. I think we found a good match.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Koska. This is our next to last action item, and this will require a motion and a vote.
I'll move
Anyone
the
like to
recommendation.
move? You move? First
I will
is
move.
trustee Nell, second trustee Mack. All in favor of approving the verification of requirements for a provisional internship permit for Terry Crocker? All in favor?
Yep.
6 in favor and 1 absent. All right, on to our final, we do. This is our final action item.
We have a consent item after that, by the way.
We do. Thank you. I'll be careful not to adjourn the meeting prior to discussing that. Item F is resolution number 3-2017-2018 to reduce and or eliminate the number of classified employees due to lack of work and or lack of funds. And Mr. Koska.
Yeah, as we continue to navigate the Ewing study, which I inherited upon moving into my office 2 years ago, we're have to make some difficult decisions, and this is one of those. We had 2 drivers who were in the same classification, one of whom through the study was promoted to lead. One of the challenges there was that the lead employee had 7 hours of time, whereas the non-lead employee had 8 hours of time and a little more time on the calendar. Made sense through the study based on the work that they were doing in an agreement with CSEA that was recently ratified. One of the outcomes was that we were going to equalize the times of those 2 drivers. Both will be at 7.5 hours. We have to do some minor adjustments to the work year as well. So that's what this resolution's coming to you to do. This is not a surprise to anybody. The employee is aware of what's going on, as is CSEA. We're all supportive of this resolution.
I'll move item F, reduction of force.
Thank you, Mr. Koska. I have a first, trustee Miller, a second, trustee Scott, and all in favor?
Thank you.
That passes 6 in favor, 1 absent.
Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And now our last remaining item of this evening is item F, was pulled by on the consent agenda, was pulled by trustee Butler. So now
I
we'll
just
talk
pulled it
about that.
because I believe it was inadvertently put on consent and should have been on discussion action, so.
And let's see, who's, Mike, are you? Okay.
The new and improved Yancey Hawkins will present this. It's me, I have to learn to put my name on the memos when I turn them in.
Getting late, Mike.
Go really quick. Here to talk about the San Marin High School Press Box project. Back in April, we hired a structural engineer to take a look at the press box. I don't know if you've been out there recently. It's in pretty bad shape. It's old, run down. We were worried about what kind of options we had, so we hired an engineer to look at it to see if it was possible to renovate the existing structure or if we needed to demolish and build new. Turns out that it would be more cost-effective to demolish existing and build new and replace with modular construction, which build it off-site, put it right on, demo the existing, put it in the same spot, and hook it up. About a 300-square-foot, one-story modular building with an observation deck on the roof. DSA compliant. Main issue with the current one is it is not DSA compliant, and it would take way too much money to even check if it was, and I think to even make it in compliance. Estimate for this project is about $250,000. Once we get schematic design, we'll have a more detailed idea. Did want to note that recommended out of Fund 21, the facilities fund, and not a bond project. And just wanted to show you some of the condition of the existing. Did you turn this off? Turned it off. So just some of the weathering and just deterioration through age, and as you can see, the whole.
It just needs painting, that's all.
Lead paint wouldn't help us.
Yeah, fix
So
all.
the problem is, once you get some of these holes, you get what I call weather access, and that just further deteriorates it. You start getting some of this dry rot. It's just expanding. And it is, and unfortunately now, because of the dry rot, rodents have chewed and gained access. And
Yeah.
when I was in the other day, one ran over my foot. It was pretty interesting. But just a lot of rust, a lot of dry rot, a lot of just weathered, beat up. And then on the inside, we have concern to some structural members showing dry rot, water damage, starting to erode some of the frame, holes to the outside. These are all excess.
That's humidity control.
And then the new pet infestation, signs of nesting, and I think so. This goes back to your concern from the previous project of control and access, and a plan to. This is in San Marin. To make sure we get a new sound system, we have a new press box with right controls and right protection, so that we don't
They
take a
don't
good
eat
investment
the wires of the PA system.
and put it in this. But it's in rough shape. Just a lot of just beat up, old, weathered problems. So based on that, superintendent staff recommend approval for the project to proceed with the San Marin High School press box replacement.
All right, so I'm bringing it back. Thank you very much. Bring it back. Any other questions?
Question, when we did the Gary Gates structure for over the Little League field, not the Little League, the softball,
field.
that Gary Gates funded that. It was done by a community, and they ended up with DSA-approved plans, and it required elevator, because there was an observation deck or a announcement deck up there. There had to be ADA access, which required them to install an elevator, which dramatically increased their cost, which they did. They put the elevator in, but it was, hundreds of thousands, I think, is the range they were in, that added to the cost of the unit. So what are we doing here? Why there's no elevator?
So that structure was built also to be Field Act compliant, which means students can access it. We're recommending for this particular one to not make it Field Act compliant because it's used mainly by coaches and announcers and whatnot.
So students couldn't go up in this new structure because it's not Field Act compliant?
They can with a waiver, but it's just not Field Act compliant.
Okay, but Field Act means it's safe in an earthquake. I mean, that's what Field Act's all about. So how, I mean, my elementary school that I went to school in was turned into a administrative building instead of a school because it wasn't Field Act compliant, which it was built in 1890, so it probably wasn't Field Act compliant, but.
So.
Exactly.
It's still, the building would still have to be DSA approved, which means it would meet all structural, electrical, and those requirements. It just wouldn't meet some of the specific around accessibility of going to the top, which would just require a waiver to go inside the building.
Okay.
But it wouldn't be meant for students to be on top of the building.
But that's exactly how that facility is used. If you go to any football game or soccer game or anything, the whole top thing is covered with guys in jerseys who are being important because they get it up there with the coach and get to take the field photos of the game. The game videos are taken from up there. So you're going to have students up there all the time. So why are we building a structure that's not what we need? I mean, I get the cost. Believe me, I get the cost. But I mean, it just seems, we made Gary Gates and those guys comply, but we don't need to comply, but we're still going to have kids up there. But what if somebody it just seems, I get you don't want to spend the money, but it just seems like we're cheating the rule. We're got our toes over the line on the rules. So I don't get it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trustee Mack. And then Trustee
I'll just speak from experience, obviously.
I've been up there 100 times with kids on the existing structure, right?
With that thing, yeah, that's bad. No, but no, the Novato structure, which it's my understanding this new structure is going to be very similar to it. It's probably maybe even the same manufacturer. It's really comprised of 3 rooms, a big one in the middle and 2 wings. And then the middle room has a ladder that goes up to a hatch, and then you get out and you have a very high rail around the whole thing. And operationally, being in there a lot, kids aren't allowed up there. Kids try to sneak up there all the time, and we tell them, no, you're not going up there. So only adults are allowed up there,
That's how we run it.
and only if they have a reason to be up there, namely a camera. We don't want people up there just, to be up there. So usually it's about 3 or 4 people, and they all have cameras, or they're doing something legit. So, but you're absolutely right. It needs to be controlled. I agree.
Okay.
So maybe there's a policy.
We will definitely bring one because of the sound system you're going to be putting into this. New
And there's the sound system I'm talking about.
Right,
The thing's
and
about 5 years old.
Just wanted to point out it's next to all this.
Can we resell it? Can we resell it?
You good? All right. Let's.
I'm good. You heard me.
Trustee Scott has a comment, then I have a comment, and I think we can wrap this up.
So
Trustee
looking
Scott.
at these photos, this is terrible, terrible condition. And I would like to know how we allowed this to happen. I mean, I, for one, have never been in this booth or surveyed that kind of damage. I'd like to know how it was allowed to get in this kind of disrepair. I'm appalled. No,
Correct. Not an excuse, but I can go talk
I
to the
would
site. and
like
find
to
out
have an answer.
what happened.
Thanks. That-
All right, my questions are regarding the last paragraph of the structural engineer's report.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure that we follow, now that we have these recommendations, there are some recommendations that they
Yes.
make. And let's make sure that we follow these recommendations and enforce these, because now we've been put on notice. Let's make sure we're not liable for any, for example, upper level to be limited to 3 people. The roof deck should not be used. The district does not allow students in the structure.
Yes.
Mr. Willard. So, that's all I ask. Yep, good, okay. This is our last, no, it's a consent, so would you like to approve that?
No.
Since you pulled it?
I'll move this item to
Trustee
approve
Butler's first, Trustee Mack's is second. All in favor of this consent item? That passes 6 in favor and 1 absent. And thank you very much.
Thank
Our
you.
next meeting, our next regular board meeting is October 3rd. And then that will be at 7 p.m. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.